everyone, you know what time it is. It is 10:30, and it is time to talk some shh IT. So buckle up your seatbelts, get on those helmets, and get prepared to learn and be filled with lots and lots of knowledge. Only here tonight on Amplify with Talking Shhh IT. I now present to you Tony and Glenn.
Hey there. How's it
Oh,
going,
I
Tony?
love that track that she did with Bo.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's got
Yeah.
that nice, mellow, laid back feel. Definitely a good one. So last week we were talking some about the MIDI parts and using the song starter to set up little MIDI parts to get started on things and get ideas working and get it to where you can actually get some ideas started, get some songs happening. So today we
And
had
get a good beat track right off the bat.
yep,
Not only do they give you a beat track, they give you a track with fills,
mhm,
plus a bass, plus some chords.
yep,
Great starting pieces.
exactly. And the fact that it gives you just a starting point and a place to, a lot of times people just get stuck on the first step really before they even got started. So getting started is definitely the key. And that's one of the good ways to do it.
Hey, and we got a special guest tonight. The professor's coming in straight out the band lab.
Oh, there we go. Getting his audio set up right there. Good to see the professor jumping in.
Oh, I'm loving the jacket too. Brains.
Always need brains. That's right. I think he's muted in the corner on
Yeah,
there.
sorry guys, I was muted.
There he
How's it
is.
going?
All right. Very good. Very good.
Yeah,
It's great to see you.
yeah, thanks. Good to be here. Yeah, I was just getting settled in, casual Friday and all, but still keep the old lab coat on. Just don't feel like myself without it, you know?
Good. And
Sure.
that's casual to me.
Yeah, well, the great thing about the lab coat is that's all I need to wear. I don't need pants, nothing. Yeah, it covers up all the naughty parts.
Mhm.
It's good.
Oh,
And I've got a
so
whole bunch of
that,
identical ones.
so that's what you got on under the jacket. You.
Yep.
Pretty much. Yeah. It's kind of like an oversized kilt, you know?
Mm-hmm. It's an idea you
Hey,
take from Einstein. Yeah.
I would do kilts. I wish
Reduces.
kilts were more in fashion.
Yeah,
I'd
that
have
would
no
be great.
problem with it.
Reduces decision fatigue.
Hang on a sec. I've just got to turn off the light behind me because I
Sure.
think it's messing with my camera.
All right.
Yeah, you got some backlighting. Looks like you got a little cage dungeon in there. Oh, it is a bird.
There he is.
Yeah, and I just brought Igor out of hiding here.
See, Joe mixes with a cat. You mix with the bird.
Hey, he's pretty smart for a bird. He's not very technical, but he's quick on the draw, you know?
No, birds are smart as hell.
Oh, they are. They're troublemakers too. They can get into anything and usually do.
Mhm.
Like right now, I don't
Well,
know
hey.
what it is about this one, but he's really got this thing for pot and
Oh, hey.
And
I
junk
told you
food.
he's a smart bird.
And junk food. Crazy. Loves chips, pizza. Every time we eat anything like that, we have to make sure he's got something to distract him.
Mhm.
Anyway,
So we've been talking about different beat makers and things to use when we start our songs. And your last episode covers some beat making, right?
yeah, it does.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was just showing a few basic techniques available within BandLab itself. If people want to add beats to their songs and don't really know the ins and outs, basic stuff, enough to get you started, but at least give you a foothold, that you can work with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of these viewers are building their beats over on BandLab, so that is the
Yeah.
good place to learn and start. The tools
I
are right
mean,
there for
it
free.
really is. Next episode, I'm going to get a little bit more in depth with MIDI, where we can create more complex beats and you know, really actually start to sound like a drummer if you wanted to go that far. But yeah, I mean, it's a really great tool. It's free, and a lot of people don't really realize the full potential of it because it's
Or
so
that it's
easy
even
to get
there.
started that you don't really bother to explore the more in-depth details of it or the finer features. And so, yeah, I figured, this is for those people that already kind of understand the rudiments, but mostly pick up stuff through trial and error. So need a little nudge to get them going in the right direction.
And I like that you're going to go into MIDI next,
Yeah.
starting with just letting them know that the tools are there and that you can start building beats this way. You
Hmm.
don't have to be a MIDI genius to put together some good beats on Bandlab.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
after you start putting those beats together, learning what MIDI is really opens up your beat making. You change the kits, you map the hits, and some of the
Exactly.
things we were looking at with the song starter last week, the fact that like it gives you 5 different MIDI tracks with drums on their own track, chords on a track, bass on its own track. Learning MIDI is going to be a great thing for these users. I like
I
that you're
mean,
going
it,
there.
it is. Most of us, unless you're like a real virtuoso, don't play more than one instrument. Some of us don't even
I
play one
barely play one
instrument very
instrument.
well.
I
So,
struggle with the one instrument.
well, yeah, of course, most of us do, and really, that's kind of what got me into this in the first place. I play the guitar, I'm a pretty decent guitar player, and I can kind of manage like a few other instruments if I really have to, basic stuff. But I've developed arthritis over the last few years. It's getting harder for me to play. So I figured, if I can't actually record my own music, maybe I can show other people how to do it, right?
And being
So
able to control it that way, considering you have to do it because you're feeling arthritis. Me, I have to do it sometimes because my fingers simply don't do what I want to play something so
sure.
fast and complex that my fingers have never learned.
Of course, sometimes you can write a piece of music that you're simply not capable of playing yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe obviously BandLab, you might be able to find somebody to collaborate with that can play it. But what do you do in the meantime? Are you just going to sit there and twiddle your thumbs, or are you going to try to
Yeah.
come up with something that at least works in the meantime, even if it's not ideal? At least it's something usable, and MIDI is great for that. It's an awesome tool.
Yes.
And I mean, the Bad Lab MIDI editor is a little bit simplified, but that's great for beginners because they don't have to worry about all the details. They can get in and start working right
Yeah.
away.
It
Start creating
actually
music
helps
right
them.
away.
It helps
Yeah,
them to get introduced to MIDI without all the extra details because MIDI can
exactly.
be intimidating. But
Not only
once you get the
MIDI,
basics, it
a
really
DAW in
isn't that.
general. I mean, if you compare like Band Lab Mix Editor to Cakewalk,
Mm.
they're worlds apart. If somebody was introduced to Cakewalk without ever having any kind of experience, they'd be overwhelmed. They wouldn't even know where to start. You can go to the BandLab Mix Editor, and within minutes, you're doing something because you're not
And
overwhelmed with all this information.
one thing I've noticed is even somebody who is familiar, say, with one DAW, can go into Cakewalk and still feel like they're overwhelmed.
It's a huge program, a lot of features, and if you're not familiar with these type of programs, because they are very similar. So I mean, I kind of alternate between Studio One and Cakewalk. I used to use
And those
Sonar
are
back in the
similar.
day, back when it was still Sonar. So I'm familiar with the interface. I can switch back and forth between them with
Yeah.
relative ease. But
They're pretty similar in their layout.
they
They,
are.
they really don't feel too different.
They have a few differences in the way certain features are implemented. I prefer some of the stuff in Studio One. Some of the stuff I prefer in Cakewalk. So that's why I kind of still go back and forth. And I like the way Cakewalk's integrated with BandLab Online,
Yeah,
where you can
that's
just
the real
transfer
plus these
stuff
days.
back and forth. That's really awesome. So you can get started online with the mix editor. And if you want to get something that you just can't do online, you grab the program, download your tracks, and work with it offline. So I'm thinking I'll probably start doing a few videos on Cakewalk as well as BandLab Mix Editor, and maybe try to cover features that are common to both, and just
Nice.
showing the differences in the way that you would actually perform these tasks.
And for some of these people, the transition as they go from utilizing the online editor to moving to something like Cakewalk for their projects. So it's nice that you're really starting with the normal transition for most of these people is they came to BandLab on their phones. Why
Probably,
they
yeah.
go past their phones, that usually their phones fill up, and then or they want better mics, and
Yeah,
then they need to learn some of these things.
well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, let's face it, most phones don't have the best audio interfaces, right? So you're not going to get the best recording quality if you're trying to record a voice or an instrument not using the built-in mic.
Unless you
And
use the lightning port audio interfaces. These
yeah,
Focusrites and these iRigs that can go both mobile or computer, hey, good mic in a lightning port Focusrite in a phone does sound as good as on the PC. I like where that's starting to become, that line's gotten blurred. Somebody can sing with professional equipment into their phone.
yeah. I mean,
Some just get
as
too
long as it
comfortable
is.
using the phone mic. It's like, it's the
No,
only
but
mic I
it's
have.
really just getting the right interface and the right mic. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's certainly possible. I have a Zoom H2 little portable recording.
Everybody has a Zoom, Glenn.
Yeah, they do. I used to
You're
Zoom
the
H6.
fourth person in the last 48 hours to tell me they have a Zoom.
And I've plugged this into my tablet, and I get crystal clear recording quality with it. It works beautifully. It's got its own USB interface built in, so I just plug it in, ready to go. I can even plug my guitar into it, into the input
Yeah, they're
jack, and
very
record my
versatile.
guitar through the Zoom. It's really great.
They're very versatile, clean as far as the audio interface goes, plug and play. That was almost the mixer I was going to get back in February. It was my number two contender. And the only reason why I didn't go with it is because I wanted to get something a little cheaper so I could get more other stuff. But if I had just focused all my budget on the mixer, I was looking at the Zoom mixer that Joe has because it does multi-track audio recording, 8 channels at once in separate buses. So almost got me.
Yeah, I mean, it's great the stuff that you can get today. I was just reminiscing. I really started recording like digitally, I guess, maybe 20 some odd years ago. And
Actually, you got in on the ground floor then.
pretty much, yeah.
That's when digital was really getting off the
Yeah, it
ground.
would have been early around 2000, give or take a little bit, I
2000-ish, yeah.
guess. Yeah. I bought a secondhand. We have this big music store here along the McQuaid. Every year they have this inventory blowout sale, right? Where they just get rid of old stock, make room for new, and dirt cheap prices. A lot of the stuff is used rental equipment, things like that. So I figure I go. I've got a budget set aside just for this in case I find something. So yeah, I've picked up a nice Yamaha synth for
Christmas
a couple
after
of $100.
Christmas.
Pretty much, yeah. That's my Christmas present to myself, kind of.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I'll pick up a mixer or a keyboard or something, an amplifier. So this particular time I'm there, and they have a Roland VS 840EX digital recorder, 8-track. And I've never seen one of these before. It actually saved the zip disks. I don't know if you remember what zip disks are. Kind of like a big
Oh,
floppy
I've been
disk.
with Roland.
I remember. Zip
Yeah, I've
disk
been
and
with
Raz disk.
Roland going back to Roland was my solution going back to the 80s, and
Mm,
zips were the only way you could actually move big files other than the gig ones that came later.
mm.
But zips were how you did audio and video and imaging,
Anything
moving
where you
work
needed
around.
high capacity, that a floppy disk, because nobody had large capacity hard drives. Certainly not in devices like that in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
was
that's where
slowing
I got my
digital down.
start. And just
Early digital suffered from not having big ass hard drives. Once the hard drives really got big enough where you could just keep all your takes, digital really took off 5, 6 years later when the storage caught up and RAM.
exactly, yeah.
Certain things had to click in. And
Because
since then, Digital is the way.
Those zip drives were 250 megabytes, I think.
Yep.
They were way less than a gig.
Yeah.
So I mean, realistically, you can't even store a single song if you're storing high resolution WAV files, 24-bit, and for even at 44.1 kilohertz, right? Those will eat
None
up
of
a
my
gig for a
projects,
single song, 8 tracks, easily.
well, none of my projects are less than 500 megs. They
Oh, there
wouldn't
you
fit
go.
on any of those zips.
No, they wouldn't. So even a simple project.
Mhm.
So they're stored in a compressed format, fairly low resolution. You're not going to get the best quality on those, but at the time, it was one of the best things available.
Yep. And then once they did the zip drives after that, it was the jazz drives were the ones that you were talking about that were the
Yeah.
more 1 gig size or beyond.
I love when we jumped to the jazz. It was like, whoa, this is big enough for video editing and moving things. And it was faster. SCSI with jazz was as good as today's like flash drives, and these solid state
It seemed
drives.
like it at the time,
SCSI
just
3
compared to
back
what came
then,
before.
Right.
and
But
for audio, for an audio music machine, all of that was the computer I had to build in 2000 to make music was a lot more complicated, and you had to custom build it. Whereas nowadays, I'm using old machines that I inherited from jobs as second music machines, third music machines, and doing things that 50, 60 track projects.
And
yeah,
that's where you do a good job of offloading certain tasks to other machines or to other, parts of your network essentially to
Yeah.
get the project going like that. And a lot of people don't have that option or don't realize they have that option. And that's where you're making good use of the utilities and the tools that you have at hand.
And surprisingly, with these phones and mobile devices these days, they're actually more powerful than some of these computers.
Yeah, definitely.
They can handle
Oh,
16 tracks on BandLab without burping.
Mhm.
when I got started in IT, my first job, we had a mainframe.
As
And
is tradition.
As
yeah,
is tradition.
and if you've seen those old science fiction movies, the huge giant room with the white walls, the bright lights, the raised floor, and you got all these big boxes scattered everywhere, that was our data center.
Yep.
So we had these DASDs. DASDs are what they called hard disks back in those days, digital access storage devices. Each one looked like about a 18 cubic foot refrigerator. Each one of these held 600 megabytes of
Oh, were they the
storage.
giant platters?
Yeah, they were huge.
The cake
Yeah.
pans. Yeah,
Huge
yeah.
ones. And they were taller than me, right? In a big box around. So we had 12 of these scattered throughout the data center. So that's how much storage we had for the entire mainframe for the entire company. Slightly over 7 gigabytes of storage on a mainframe.
And the mentality back then was like, this is more than we'll ever need. Because if
Yeah.
you think about that much storage back then, it's like, oh my God, I'm never going to. It's like what I think of 10 terabytes right now. I
Yeah.
got 10 terabytes of storage for $10. And I'm thinking, like, damn, that's a lot of cloud storage. I probably won't fill it. And turns out I'm already halfway there after 6 months.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
amazing how fast that fills up,
Yeah.
especially with
There's-
music projects.
Well, terabytes seem so big to me even 10 years ago. Now I'm trying to think in it's exabytes. That's where we go to next.
Yeah.
I mean, until we start using the term, I can't even fathom, like, oh my God, if I had an exabyte drive right now, I'd never need another hard drive.
1,000 terabytes. That's a
But
lot.
if I had it, I'd probably fill it.
Yeah. Well, you'd never delete anything. That's for sure. You just make a folder called recycle bin and you put stuff there. And then, if you ever need it again, it's still there.
Yeah,
I never
that's-
delete
that's
anything.
pretty much
Neither
it.
do I. That's one of the problems I have.
We've reached that point now where like everybody's that way. Nothing gets deleted. The emails don't get deleted anymore. They just get crunched down and archived into, Google and Microsoft take care of the crunching down of the old emails, but they don't even encourage you to delete them anymore because they can't. They have to keep them anyway. So
they might as well let you have access.
well, as long as you go through the archive button, because it's zipped up over here. So we can't just put it into your like regular folders. It does have to get archived.
I mean, so many of the tech problems that we had over the years related to archive folders over the years, back when archive folders first started getting big, when people first started putting them on the network, there's just all kinds of things that were causing problems over the years with that stuff. But it is good that it's gotten easier. And I love the fact that we're at a point where things don't need to get deleted and we have enough storage for everything and just store everything all the time. And then if you need a copy of something, I can go back to the one you had 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago or whatever.
Yeah, well, and to take it back to music,
Mhm.
these are the things that like I don't want to not archive. One thing I like about BandLab is it really gets you focused on revisions. Now
Iterations. Yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah, now that I've had a couple of years of revision thinking with my projects, I don't want to ever go back to just like, okay, here's the master archive where I left off. And, if you make revisions, how you structure them and save them, that's one thing that you can appreciate with BandLab. It's free cloud storage with that ability built in. I don't revision my stuff locally as effectively as they do.
No. And the
No,
other thing is that it can give you with the multiple iterations, the multiple versions, is the fact that you can see what a project started as and what it ended as. Like when you get to
Yeah.
that end revision, it might sound nothing like with that nugget that it started as, that one first guitar track or whatever that started the song off. So it's a lot of times it's fun to see where it started and see how it kind of made that journey to get to the full song at the end.
And it's nice to go to a certain revision if you go, sometimes you go a little crazy mixing,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
you save at certain parts because it's like, oh, this is sounding better, save, this is sounding better, save, and then all of a sudden you hit that wall where, oh, I did too much, and where did I lose it? I Sometimes you do have to go back
yeah,
to a previous
that's a
day
great feature.
Yeah.
just to like get back to the zone that you were in before you went nuts.
And I would do that the next
Even
time.
the ability to branch revisions,
Mhm.
Yeah.
where you can do like these A/B type comparisons. Okay, I'm going to try this kind of effect here. I'm going to try that kind of effect there
Mhm.
from based on
Now,
the same revision, and then you can compare them and decide what direction you
I
want to go from there.
I wish they would give me some options. When you're looking at the revision history and you can visually see like where you're branching off.
Hmm.
I'd like to see an option to add a note, not just to the description of the revision, because that does help. I do a lot of my notes in the description, but I'd like to be able to visually like put a graphic up and say like, this is where I tested the effect, no effect, some icons in the revision history that I could visually set and say like, this is a vocal branch
As a matter of fact, you
or
might
a
be able to.
guitar branch.
I haven't tested it, but when you, if you were watching or were listening to one of my tracks and you start typing in a comment at some point, it puts that dot up in the track, like at 8 seconds, so and so said whatever.
Oh yeah.
Like that kind of a thing. If it does that, because that might do that on those revisions as well. Like if you're listening to that
That's a good
revision
idea.
and you go look at the comments to see, because you might be able to have it say like here's where the second chorus starts, or here's where
I
the bridge
hadn't
should
even
be, or
thought
whatever.
of that. That's a good out of the box idea.
Just because it's already in there, I don't know if it works on that particular
And,
scenario, but that would be easy enough to implement if it's not.
and because the way those comments work, a lot of people don't even realize it. When somebody writes a comment, wherever the track was before they start typing,
Right,
there
when they
is a
clicked
little
on it.
marker.
Yep.
And I've been saying, I wish that BandLab had markers.
Mhm.
Turns out that is kind of a marker. And
Mhm.
sometimes I'd like to put a note to say a singer who's going to sing on the track, like this, focus on this part, or this is the part I'm talking about.
Right.
If you actually put your own comments in there and time them and make the
Mhm.
comment,
Mhm.
you are leaving a marker. Glenn, I think you actually got a solution for me there that
Before you
I
finish
hadn't.
talking about the problem.
Well, that's a good way of utilizing that feature.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
couldn't
and again,
think of
if
where
it
that
works,
feature
that's
was useful
yeah,
until
yeah.
what you were just saying.
Mhm. Revision history and notes essentially,
Markers.
markers.
I,
Yeah,
I really wish they would get markers into the online editor, because
Yeah, you'd think
just
that would
like
be
in
a simple
Cakewalk,
feature to
markers are so
like the arranger track.
freaking
Yeah.
useful in Cakewalk. Of course, if I'm writing a song, have you used the arranger function that they added last year,
Mhm.
Louis?
Yeah, I've played with it a little bit. It's a lot of
Because
fun.
between
Yeah.
the arranger and the markers, if when I write a song in the future, all I kept thinking when they added that function, I'm like, in the future, I'm going to write my songs using the arranger and
Yeah,
markers, so that way I can say double this part and
I mean,
stop
essentially
trying
what you
to like
do
lay down the whole
is you
track.
create sections. You could use the markers as points to starting points,
Yeah.
but you create sections, you name them, and then the arranger track, you can take these sections you created and combine them in any combination in any order you want, as many copies of each, and just try different arrangements. I don't know, verse, verse, chorus, verse, bridge, or
It helps you to
you
it helps
know,
you to think of the song construction.
and
A
you
lot of
look at the
times
structure,
people
overall
just go
structure
write
of the
the
song.
song
Yeah,
and they just write the song in like a linear, get it out of me approach. With the arranger, it really helps to start thinking of like, you know, the good songs out there, they're arranged with the verse, bridge, chorus approach
exactly.
because that's what is usually what works. Doesn't mean that you can't get out of that box, but with the arranger, it actually helps some of these artists to
Well,
start
the beauty
thinking
of
that way.
this, of using the arranger track, let's say you're like me and you just sit down and start throwing out ideas and recording them, right? So I come up with a riff, I say, hey, yeah, that might sound good for a verse. So I record a few bars of this. And then I play around a little bit more and I say, yeah, this might make a good chorus. And I record a few bars of that. I haven't actually tried to record a song yet. I've recorded 8 bars
Just
of a verse, 4 bars.
assembling your
Okay,
parts.
so now let's take these and start combining them in different combinations. And you figure, okay, at some point it gets boring. I have to insert something there. So what am I going to put? You play something, open up a space, stick it in. Ah, it sounds good now. And you can just build a song piece by piece like that.
And,
Like
and
Lego bricks. Yeah.
Yeah,
ironically, sometimes at the end, what you thought was a verse turns into a chorus, and what you
you,
thought was
you
a
never
chorus
know.
turns into a verse.
I've had that
Yeah.
When
happen a
you
couple
start
times.
to,
Yeah.
Sometimes
oh,
they
it
take on a life
happens
of
to
their
me
own.
all the time. So I tend to write my choruses before I start getting into the rest of the song. A lot of times, my original ideas start with the chorus hook, and then I'm thinking like
Mhm.
I got to write something around this.
Yeah, often you just get these ideas that come to your mind and you already know what to do with them, but you don't want to forget them, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, just throw it, create a track, record it, and it's there. I mean, I know enough music theory. I can read and write sheet music, but I don't do that. I just hear it, I play it, they hear
I've done it
it.
like 5% of my songwriting approach. I
Yeah,
utilize
sometimes
music
I'll just
theory
jot down the
first.
chord names or something if I just
Yeah.
want a quick reference, but more often than not, if I have an idea I think is worth remembering, I'll just quickly record it. And you end up with all these little snippets lying around. And at some point you figure, okay, I got to figure out what to do with them. And you start listening to them and you say, hey, okay, yeah, that might be useful here. That might make a good intro. And you start trying to figure out how you can piece all these bits together.
And grow the
Sometimes you
idea,
can't. Sometimes you
grow.
hear stuff and you go, why did I even record that? And you toss it,
Yeah.
right? But
But see, that's why I like to be at a certain point before I stop. What I've noticed sometimes when I get a really good idea, if I don't go through enough of the process with it and I end up going to sleep, some ideas I never revisit because I didn't get to a good dropping point. I didn't
mm,
make
You
enough
didn't
of
get
a
enough to
recording or
remind
a
yourself of
capture.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't remember that idea because I don't have the same inspiration the next day.
right.
Yeah. I hate when
Yeah.
that happens.
Often I'm like that when you really get in the zone and you start working on something, you just can't stop because you know if you stop, you'll never be able to pick up where you left off. And you
Yep.
just have to see it through. If it means you end up going to bed 4 in the morning, that's what
Yeah,
happens, right?
that's what
But
happens. That's what-
You gotta find the good breaking points though, because you want to find that point where you're not yet at the point where you're doing so many changes that you're already past the point. You're past the point of diminishing returns, where now
yeah,
every change you're making is making things a little bit worse or a little bit harder to mix or a little bit whatever. Whereas when you first started, you had a vision in mind, like how you were going to get it. Once you got to that point, it's important to just step away from it and then listen to it again the next day. Like fresh ears is the whole idea. Like, give it 24 hours, come back and listen to it.
if
Was
I
I in the right
if I
place?
feel if I feel like I'm happy with the idea that I'm trying to develop and that like, oh, this is a good idea that I do want to remember, and I've done something so that I can remember it. Little quick recording, a little blurb so that I can revisit that inspiration. Or if I use, like, say, the song starter, I have the initial thing that got me in the groove in the first place, then I can go to sleep. And I know that I will revisit it because I've got something to go back to remind me where I left off.
A lot of times for me, it's the bass line. I mean, surprise, surprise, I start with the bass line for stuff. But I mean, when I have an idea, like if I can get enough of that bass feel into just a little recording, that'll really get me enough to be able to re-identify that groove the next day. So the next day I can come back to and go, oh yeah, that. And within, 30 seconds, be right back into the spot where I left off.
Yeah,
But it
bass
has to
line's
be
a good
enough of
way to
that.
remember.
Yeah.
Melody
Yeah.
sometimes it is the melody that keeps me, like, Ange keeps throwing melodies at me, and then they stick in my head for like a week, and I'm like, okay, can't forget it now, because like it just swirls around long enough that you can always go back to it.
And one
Good
that sticks
melodies
with you
or
like
good
that
lines.
probably is worth working on. If it's stuck in your head, it will stick in other people's heads too.
Yeah, that's the thought.
So-
Exactly.
Yeah, for a guitarist, that riff that like all of a sudden you're chugging in your head, then yes, you inspired yourself enough that you will eventually do something with it.
Mhm.
Indeed. Now, I did go ahead and I downloaded your third episode of the Band Lab so that I do have that queued up whenever you guys want to do it. We can
Cool.
watch the whole thing. We can
Well,
watch parts of it any way you want to take care of it.
I mean, that's really up to you guys. I'll provide any commentary if needed, but yeah, I mean, go ahead. If there's any parts that I think might be boring and worth skipping ahead, I'll say so.
We'll just have to make sure that the volume comes through at a good
Well,
level.
I'd like to see it.
Let me see what we have
And
here.
beat making is what I'm currently. I'm going through reviewing different beat makers. I'm looking at Groove Agent, Easy Drummer, Superior Drummer. Glenn's got a couple of them in different directions. This Drum Monkey,
Yep,
I
yep.
really want to get.
That was
take
one
a
I
look
don't
at
have
that at
yet,
some
but that was one that I would love to mess around with some. But I think that one was one that in order to use it at all, you have to buy it, and it's quite expensive. But it's one that looked like it was just literally you hit a button, random drum groove right there. And then
No,
you don't
if
like it, just hit another button, random drum groove.
Maybe
again.
if we reach out to them and say we'd like to evaluate this, and in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
kind of environment, we might be able to at least get access to it for a little while, because I would
Yeah.
like to check out that AI.
Absolutely. That would be a good plan. We'll have to look
Yeah.
at that. Now we got Sienna Jump saying hi. So hello. Hello, Sienna.
I love the retro look.
Yeah.
I
And,
feel like I'm in a 50s sci-fi.
let's just make sure we have the volume coming
Hi,
through.
Sienna. Yep, sounds good.
Cool.
Yeah, I think I did originally when I came up with the idea for the show. Have that in mind, like some sort of 50s B movie
Oh, big fan
character or
of
something, but
big
Oh, carries the
fan
feel
of
nicely. Yeah.
great music that you're using on that too. Where did you get that?
there's a site called MixKit. All sorts of free sound effects, short audio clips like this, video clips.
Well, nice
All,
choice
all
of
free, royalty free, great stuff.
nice choice of the beat, because
I'm gonna go get into character.
it's got that suspenseful, sciencey feel.
Self-destruct sequence has been activated.
Yeah, this was well, my assistant
seconds.
Igor. Igor. He's
Press
handling
the button for
production, and
self-destruct in 10 seconds.
this was his first time on the job, so he
Lab is
kind of
self-destructed.
accidentally hit the
Five,
self-destruct button for the lab.
Oh, Igor.
Self-destruct sequence
We caught
has
it in
been
time.
cancelled.
It wasn't anything
Thank you for
serious.
using Acme
Little
Security
accidents like this will
Systems.
happen. He's
Have a
learning.
nice day.
That's a very friendly warning voice.
Hey everyone.
It is.
Welcome to
Actually,
the
that's
show.
great
Host,
security
me.
systems.
And
If they were
assistant,
paying me, I'd
Igor.
love them.
Yeah, it's the same Igor that almost blew up the lab earlier. Like I said, he's new, and he's a bird. So cut him some slack. Anyway, this episode we're going to be looking at creating beats. Previous episodes we've been working with a metronome, which does provide a basic beat for us to follow, but it's not particularly musical. And at the end of the day, once we've got our song structure pretty much figured out, we're going to want some drums, real drums. If we can't find a real drummer, though, we're going to have to come up with a reasonable facsimile. So that's what we're going to do this episode, is find reasonable facsimiles to a real drummer.
Yeah, there's something
Starting
wrong
with
with this
Bad Labs
bird.
built
He
in
seems to
drum
prefer being in my hands
It's
over being in my
versatile,
shoulder. I don't know what it
easy to
is.
use,
Um,
and heck of a
but
lot better
he's
No,
than
you
a-
make a
metronome.
you make a
So
good
it's a
perch.
starting point to setting up a good beat to work with your song.
but
Until
the
you
He
get
needs a
it.
good
It
assistant
doesn't
with a
just
assistant with
form
a second set of
finger.
eyes.
Depending on your taste,
He
and the
actually
genre
sits
that you're
in the
working with,
palm of my hand.
it may
It's very
actually
strange.
provide the beat that you need. No drummer needed.
Hang on a minute.
It really depends on your own particular preferences. But what if you don't want to use the drum machine? Alternative to that is using Bad Labs audio loop library. Whole mess of loops in there. A lot of these loops are percussion drum loops. We can use these in our song if we can find the one that works. Sometimes having to sort through them all to find the right one can be time consuming, but you never know. There could be just some gems hidden there. So we're going to look at some of those drum loops, see if we can find some that we can use for our project. And last but not least, MIDI. MIDI is probably the most versatile option there is. We can create pretty much unlimited loops or beats using MIDI, but because it is so versatile, it's also a little bit more involved, more complicated. So we're just going to touch on it this episode, and we'll get into it in more depth in the later on episode. So to get started, let's go right into our mix editor. Here we are, and we are going to add a track just by clicking on the little add track button up here in the top left. And with a lot of other things in Bad Lab, as I discussed last episode, there is a shortcut key, and the shortcut key is Shift-T. So once we have the new track window open, we're just going to click on Drum Machine here, and oh, look at that. What happened here? Okay, so we have a new track labeled Drum Machine, and there's some stuff in here. And what happened, if we click on this instrument button, bottom left, well, here's our drum machine. I'm just going to float this because it's being obstructed by my shameless plug from my Band Lab page. So here's our drum machine, and what our drum machine basically provides is a grid. The grid is 1 bar in length, 4 beats, and each one of those beats is subdivided into 4 subbeats. Each one of these rows represents a particular instrument or percussion instrument, and if we click on it, you'll hear what it sounds like. You can also press a keyboard key to preview it. You'll see the character to the right of the icon, so usually a number or a letter. For instance, if I press T, you'll hear the tom. If I press F, you'll hear the snare. S, you'll hear the kick drum, and so on. So you can preview what a particular instrument is. Different kits will have different instruments. Even if they have the same names, they're going to sound very different. If we click on that drop-down button there, we can not only preview it, but select an alternative. So if I want a hand clap there instead of whatever had been there originally, I have a hand clap available now. This is because a lot of drum kits have more instruments available than there are rows in our drum machine. So
And that's very intuitive remapping.
And to get us started, Band Lab actually provides 2 patterns to get us started. And these are the 2 patterns that were
Definitely, I like that.
into our project.
The fact that it gives you the A, B, so you start with
After
2.
listen to them, they really do not work with what we have there. So I'm just going to delete them, at least delete them from the project. We won't necessarily delete the pattern itself. We can either come in here now and edit
Now, do the
existing
patterns
pattern
get
to make it
stored per
sound
project?
more suitable
Yes.
to what we're working with, or
Useful.
just create a new one. We do have 8 patterns available to work with. The remainder, C through H, are blank right now, so I'm just going to take one of the blank ones, and I'm going to
If
start
you
filling
could
stuff
share
in.
patterns
Before I
for
do
different
that, though, I
projects,
think I'm gonna
that's
change
the next
drum
level.
kits. The 808
Well, you kind of
is great
can.
for hip hop and a few other styles of music, but not particularly for the
Later on, I'll export
you
this
see,
drum
we have
track
a
that I created and
huge
import
number
it
of
as a
kits
MIDI
available
track.
to work
So
with.
you can do that. You can save it
I'm
as
just
MIDI
gonna
and
come
then
in
use that
here
MIDI in
and,
other
why
projects.
not blues?
So you can build your own
We're
little
gonna
MIDI
start with
library
really
of drum
Exactly, yeah.
basic
machine
pretty
patches.
beat
Nice.
here, or a pattern.
Very cool.
Is just by clicking in one of these boxes. So you see this bottom row is a kick drum. I'm going to put a kick drum on beginning of beat 1 and the beginning of beat 3. And we can preview our pattern here to see what it sounds like. While I'm at it, I'm going to add some snare, I guess. That sounds pretty good. maybe, what is that? That's a closed hi-hat. There we go, a little bit of closed hi-hat. That sounds pretty good. So if I want to add this to my project, I'm just going to come here, click C. It creates a 1-bar loop, which I can then stretch out as much as I want. And let's hear how this sounds. Okay. I accidentally added a crash there. We can get rid of it. Okay,
Or use
that
the
works.
crash
It's a little
every
bit
so many
boring,
measures.
but it's
Yeah,
more
I
efficient.
could create
We can
a second
embellish this, we
pattern
can add some
that
fills,
includes the
we can,
crash and then alternate
well, one of the
between
things that you
the
would
pattern
typically
with and
do with
without.
a beat like this is probably have
Those
an
would be your
808
first
groove on the
patterns you would
hi-hat,
want.
where you would
Probably,
play
yeah.
them
And,
between
you
the
could
beats
create
as well.
fills, all sorts of
One
stuff.
of the things you're going to notice
You
now
have
is
up to
that
8 patterns, but you can always add a second drum machine
doesn't
track if you
really
need more
work.
than 8.
Why is that? Now, if you remember, I mentioned that this was a shuffle rhythm, this particular blues, even though it's notated in 4/4 time. In a shuffle rhythm, the eighth notes, the notes that fall in between the beats,
And that second
don't
MIDI
fall
track
exactly
is useful for
halfway
the
between
fills.
the beats. They're a
Exactly,
little
yeah.
offset.
Yeah, that's the whole
And
song
that
starter
that's what
approach.
kind of gives it that feel. If we listen to it without the drums, you'll hear that it's long, short, long, short, long, short. Whereas the drum beat itself, those hi-hat beats are very evenly spaced. Those are what are called straight eighths as opposed to swung eighths. So how do we fix this? Unfortunately, we can't. That's one of the limitations of the drum machine, is that we're kind of locked into this four-part subdivision per beat. For a shuffle rhythm, we would have to have...
Now, if you changed your
three
time
subdivisions,
code from
a triplet
4/4
beat.
right now,
So
It
we
will
can't
not
really do
change.
that.
The
It
drum
won't let you-
machine
it
always-
locks it?
is always
We can try
4/4.
other options.
My guess is if you
Oh.
export it as MIDI, though,
I think
then
we're
you'd be able to
kinda
take that
stuck
MIDI
there.
track
At
and
that
go
point,
and,
you can play with it all you want.
yeah,
So
then you'd be able to
you're-
quantize and tell it to swing if you wanted.
Subdivisions
you're
are
saying
60
in
notes.
the
other
online
limitation
drum
is that
machines
we're pretty
always
much
4/4.
locked into 4
Yes.
beats per measure, regardless of what time signature.
That's got to be
If
a
I
little
went in here
buzzkill.
and decided to create
Oh,
It-
and
it-
you're,
it
and
is
you're
a
explaining it.
or
Go
some
figure,
other
you slick
opposite
bastard.
signature,
And you can kind of fake it out.
we still only provide 4 beats per measure. It's a little bit limited. But as I had mentioned previously, the vast majority of popular songs are in 4/4 time. So for the most part, you're not going to find this too much of a limitation. The other limitation, well, it's a minor one, is that we are limited to 8 patterns. So if you have a song where the beat changes frequently, you have a lot of different beats in one song, you may run out of patterns. That's easy to correct just by adding a second drum machine to your project, and voila, you have 8 new patterns to work with. So that's a workaround. The other limitation, and this one there really is no workaround for, is that you can't adjust the volume of the individual drum beats. They're all going to be exactly the same volume all the time. When you couple that with the fact that every beat falls squarely
That's
on
a
the
buzzkill.
grid, there's really no
That is,
variation
yeah.
of them at all.
But
The
mean,
drum machine tends
you
to
can
sound
fix
very
it
much
after.
like-
yes.
For
if
those
you-
who really
which
want
isn't
to
necessarily a
humanize
bad thing,
their
again,
shit,
depending on the genre
then
you're
you take
working
the
with,
MIDI
you
and
may want a machine
go to
like this.
Cakewalk.
But for something like this, blues, you may want something a little more organic, a little bit more human sounding, in which case that drum machine simply isn't going to work. So, what do we do if we can't use the drum machine? Our next option, I guess, would be to start looking into the loop library, and we are going to do that in just a few seconds.
Oh, I like the channel
Okay, so we're
change.
just gonna close things up here.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
He's got
got
that kind of worked out
track,
more or
but I
less.
will not. I'm just going to mute it. And I'm also going to point out something here. You see that you have the option here, the export track as MIDI. Behind the scenes, the drum machine is actually using MIDI. It hides all the details from us, but if we download the contents of the track and bring it back up, you'll see that we actually have MIDI here. And it's being converted to audio. So this is what's happening behind the scenes, and we're going to keep hanging on to this for a little while because we may want to come back to it for demonstration purposes.
I like that you brought the loop back in as MIDI like this.
But for now,
Yeah,
Good to
so easy too.
what we're
Yeah,
going to
it's
do
good to
is
see. It's good to see the process.
go into our loop library. And we're going to find that by clicking on this band.
And that's technically where you should be able to go down there and do the quantize, and you should be able to change to the swing if you wanted
Exactly,
to.
yeah. Quantize the
Now you have
third
some
note,
flexibility.
eighth note triplets, and we're good.
There. But actually, let's start with the one-shots. One-shots are individual sounds. It could be a sound effect.
I
a
actually
single drum
demonstrate
hit,
that in the
a
upcoming
chord
episode.
played on
I
an
didn't have time in
instrument,
this
a
one.
single note played on an instrument.
I try to be
And
concise,
you can
but
combine these in various
I
ways
want to
to
give
make
enough
more
details that
complex
people
sounds.
actually understand what's going on too.
Well, I like
It's
that.
hard to
A
strike
little
the
bit
right
more
balance.
complex already. Than
I like that you're
probably
spotlighting, the
full
difference
blown
between a
beat,
sample
or
and the
possibly
loops.
a chord progression, something a little bit more fancy.
It's nice that
than
they
just
give you the
a
one-shots.
single note. And,
Yeah,
That's a
build your own
sampler.
beats.
Let's look at
Yeah.
a couple of them. Let's look at bass. Just gonna click on one at random to preview it. So you see, it's an actual bass line, not just a single bass note. And we'd be able to drag this into our project and loop it all we want. Packs are a collection of one-shots and loops that complement each other. They're intended to
And
work
these
together.
are very
So you
popular.
can create
They are,
entire songs.
and I've
with
played with
one
a
of these
few.
packs.
You can mix and match the different components.
For now,
and
though,
they work pretty well together. And you
Yeah,
get,
it
and
gives you
we're
a
gonna
theme
limit
of
our,
loops.
Exactly.
selection here. Basically, what we want are drums. Well, the genre here is kind of blues, rock. There is no blues. I'm going to go with rock metal. And you see, even if we narrow it down the genre, there's a lot of drums here. I'm not going to
They
even
need
try
more
to preview them
filtration.
all because it would
Like
take
if you
way
say
too long.
ambient
So
or
suffice it to say
happy,
that I have listened to
people
all
are
these
searching
drums,
with
and I have
people
a
are
few that
searching
I
with
like.
emotions these
These
days
that's
more than
mood or
genre.
something like that as well.
Yeah.
You have to be able to like tag a couple things and have it narrowed down nicely.
Yeah,
They're real drums
tags need to
played
get
by a real
incorporated into
drummer.
this.
And what they provide
Because
is a lot
there's
of
so much there,
variations.
you really
There's
need a
lot
way to
of
narrow the search down. Otherwise, you
There's a
spend
few
most of your time
basic
sampling stuff.
general purpose
You know what they
beats,
should
but there's
do?
a lot of variations
They
that
should
you
let
can use.
users
So you can use
add
in a song to add variety,
identifiers to these.
rather than having one
users
loop
can
for
do
the
the work
entire
for them.
song. And I guess the easiest way to demonstrate this is to actually put them in. So
Easiest
I
way
have
would
to
even just be a
preview them,
voting
and I know
system.
that from
Vote up,
reviewing
vote
from
down.
27
Ones that
even.
you don't like,
Basically,
vote them
if I drag
down.
the
Ones that
loop
you do
in, it
like,
will
vote them up, and that'll
automatically create a
float
track
some of the
for
best
me.
ones to the top.
Oh, that's a good
And
idea too.
if we listen
Yeah.
to this, I'm just going to solo it. I could have previewed it here. So now you hear this is a shuffle rhythm. If you listen to the hi-hat, it has that uneven beat, just like the guitar does.
Now you put that into a 120 beat project,
Yes.
It works
and
beautifully.
that was ideally at 120.
I'll
all
just
those
leave
are.
this
We're
for the
recording at
entire,
120, yes.
Yeah,
six,
yeah, it looks like
So
they all
that's
are.
going to give you the best audio quality.
But rather than do that, I'm just going to
But I mean, you can
pull in a
change
few
it,
other
adjust the
variations
tempo.
of this
As
same
long
beat,
for drums, you can
and just
change the tempo
So
a fairly
first thing
wide
I
amount
do,
before
if
it
you
starts to
remember
impact the
Snap to
tonality of the
Grid,
drums.
I like using Snap
So,
to
you know,
Grid.
easily
It makes
20%
things
either
clean and
direction.
easy.
Yeah, agreed.
And
There's enough
Anything
blank
more.
space
grid,
between
I'm going to
transients,
turn
yeah.
on, and I'm going to set the grid size. Why not?
And they have to be somewhat equal.
So
in
that was
how
sample number
Glenn mentioned that the
27.
other
I
day.
happen to know
You
that
go up
they're
one
sequential,
beat
so sample
versus
28
two.
would be the next one.
some
And if
things
we
don't
play from here,
fit well in the one.
See, it's
Yeah.
essentially the same beat, except it starts with a crash. So I'm just
It's also
going
why
to-
120 is such a
okay,
magic
that
number
was
because it evenly
28,
divides by so many
29.
things.
There's
100
that,
and
yeah.
120 are my
Going
go-to
to throw them
tempos
all in here
until I
rather
figure
than
out what
preview
tempo
them
I'm
at a
in.
time. We'll just combine them all and run through them, and get an idea of what they do.
Yeah, I generally
Now,
like
as I
multiples
said,
of 20.
but in real life,
80
I
for
would
like a
not just
slow
take each
blues
one
or
of
ballad
these
type
and
thing,
combine
Yeah.
them.
Mid-tempo 100,
And
120.
Sometimes
or
I'll-
for a
you
fast
can
one.
stretch them. You
Sometimes
can,
I'll do 10 as I'm
clip
trying to
cut
figure
them
out
up
my
if you
exact
want. If you
tempo.
want to,
I'll jump
say,
10
keep only
up
the
or down to
crash,
narrow in.
or only
but
a
20
fill,
is
you can do that. And I kind of lost track of where
how
I
I
am.
jump.
32, 33, 34. I think this goes all the way up to 37. So that's 11 different variations of the same beat available for us to use, which is pretty cool. Okay, I think that does it. So let's take a listen. So there we go. We've got our beat.
And you
Real
slap
drums.
together a whole song's worth of drum beat.
You have a crash at the beginning
In
of
about
that.
60
Otherwise, it's
seconds.
essentially the same beat as the first time.
With some good variation in between, so it's not all the same the whole time.
Crash again, slightly different sounding crash. And if you look at the waveform, you can see they even look different. Crash again.
Yeah, it actually gives it some humanization back.
Oh, a little bit of a fill there.
Yeah, I love these Steve Jackson drums.
Different fill.
Just
Little
having a
tasteful
real
fills at
drummer.
the end of the 4, yeah, it
There are
tells you
also
you're coming
little
back around.
variations in the volumes of the.
Yeah, they
the
put a lot of thought
drums.
into the sample.
Yeah.
How the hi-hat,
Well
sometimes
recorded.
the hi-hat's completely closed, sometimes partially open.
And those are beautifully sampled. Like, that's
So
how a wave
it's much more
should
natural
look.
sounding.
When
It
that's
really
playing.
sounds like you have a real drummer playing along with you. So you notice this, now we've gotten to cross stick.
Yeah,
instead
a
of
little
playing
bridge.
a regular snare.
And you actually added that when you already had your acoustic tracks.
That's right, because I recorded to the click track.
You recorded to the metronome, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the thing I
Okay, so
cannot.
those are the different variations.
overcome
of just
yet.
This one beat.
Metronome messes
Actually,
me up.
Really, and you know, these are all
We'll get you there,
about
Tony, we'll get you
4
there.
I
measures
know.
long.
I'm trying.
So
When I
typically you would use 2 of these
early in
in
my
say, an 8
guitar
measure,
playing
verse.
days,
This is a 12
I
bar
decided
verse.
to
We
take
use
lessons.
maybe
I'd
2
only been
different
playing
ones,
about
combine them in
maybe
different
3
ways,
months on my own.
or stretch one out to
And
8
my
measures, or
guitar
12
teacher
if you want. So each verse
heavily,
could be
heavily
slightly
stressed
different
the
from
use
the
of
other
the
one.
metronome.
Add
So
some
it just
variety
became
interest to the song.
habit. It's just
It's a
natural for me
great
to play along
way.
with it.
He
I
was a
just
good
do that.
teacher to do
real
that.
drummer.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for having good timing, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is really great. Now, before we wrap this up,
And then
And
anyone
for
can
some-
develop good
back in
timing
here
with the
and look at
metronome,
the
and it's
one-shot.
enough practice. That's the main
These are
thing.
For
Steve
some,
Jackson drums.
They're going to prefer this loop
that I've
method,
been using,
making their
and
beat,
I
and the
just happen
MIDI.
to like these, but there's a lot of
It's
other
nice that
options
you spotlighted
available.
both.
You just have to browse and see what you like yourself. But if we come in here and look at the one-shots, so for instance, kick, and same, I'm going to come to rock metal, you'll see that there are some Steve Jackson kick drums here as well. And if you play them,
just the
Yeah, some of those
range
Steve Jackson ones
samples
are
that you
awesome.
have available are
Out.
awesome.
so you have all these different variations of a single kick drum. Excuse me. So you really have a lot of options here if you want to create a beat from scratch.
Or
I'm gonna do a
give
quick
it different
example here
dynamics
because this could
across
get
the measures,
really involved.
like you
Exactly,
did there with the
so
different
it's,
splashes.
a quarter,
That
one beat.
humanizes electronic
I'm going to
music.
take, say, a hard kick.
Yeah, because if you're working with
And
MIDI,
now what I can
even
do,
if you lower the velocity of a
if
note,
I zoom out a little
depending on the sampler you're using, it may use the same loud sample and just lower the volume of it.
So it's about,
So it just sounds like a loud kick drum with the volume
beats
turned
are
down,
And the-
not
and
like
the-
a soft
and I'm going to copy
kick drum.
it.
The
Alright,
listener
if I press the Alt
subliminally
key
picks
while
up that
dragging
there's
this,
a
it'll create
difference.
copy.
Yes, they do.
So
They don't. It's not
Go
conscious, but somewhere they know that
Mess
doesn't
that
sound
up.
right. Nothing is
a
that
couple of
consistent all the
times,
time,
what we'll
right?
do. And
And
sometimes I
they
kick drum every 2
they
beats.
end up picking up that like it feels human.
Mm-hmm.
Because they pick up when it's
Mute it.
electronic. When it's perfect and synchronized so perfect, the listener,
There's our
whether
kick
you're a
drum.
music expert or not,
And we
knows.
can come back here,
that a
and if we
machine
wanted
made
to,
that.
we could find a snare.
Very easy to
And
hear.
same thing, Steve Jackson, and we have again different. And one of the things with the different volumes, it's not that just the drums get louder with the louder hits. The tone of the drum changes. This is something you can't really simulate when using a virtual instrument. These
Jeez, I'm repeating
nuances in
myself.
tone. So you can really
If
get
you
a
have the
very
right
realistic
controller
drum sound here.
with,
And we can
you
do the
know,
same kind of thing.
expression
Yeah,
set
It's
properly,
Sure.
that's
Go
how
in
you
here
simulate it.
somewhere, trim
If
down,
it's
so
velocity
it's about 2
sensitive,
beats
sure.
now.
Weighted keys, good drum
And
pads.
we're gonna
Yeah, I'm loving the
copy
weighted
that as
keys.
well. For some reason, we lost our snap to grid setting. So there's our grid. We're just, whoops. I forgot to press Alt. I pressed Control for some reason. I'm being very messy. I'm going to start again. There we go. All right. So we're going to copy that.
That's what I do.
That's it. That's interesting. Now we're going.
I use
Don't be afraid to
undo
take a
so
step back to go
much.
forward.
I automatically know Control Z, Control Z, Control Z.
Sometimes when you step back, you can make a big jump.
So yeah, we can build up
Undo
a
can be
beat
very important, yes.
hit by hit doing it this way.
Whoever
One of the things
invented
you'll
that
notice is
should
I
have
have to
won
create a
Nobel
track
Prize
for
or
each
something.
individual instrument. If I want to add a closed hi-hat, well, any
Sometimes I wish
hi-hat,
the undo
I'd have to
memory
create a
list was
hi-hat
longer
track.
because I
I'd
want to
have
undo
create,
more to get back to a
yeah,
spot where something happened long ago.
tom
I
track.
find
if
that
wanted
is
to add
Well,
a
inefficient
tom
and that's
and
what
a
revision
scratch, I'd
saving.
have to create a track
You know,
for
that's
that.
what revision
so
saving
basically,
is.
every instrument in the kit would need its own
That's an
track.
undo.
And you can see
It
this
does
can get pretty
remember.
involved. I want to start adding fills or variations.
It's also the importance of
in
saving your
types
work
of
frequently.
drums.
Don't go 7 hours
But
without saving and then
overall,
crash and
it
be like,
gives
oh,
you
I
a
lost all
lot of
that. Save every hour
Shame
and
on
you
you.
always go back. Shame on you. Exactly.
Everybody should have that happen once so it never happens to them again.
Yeah.
Am I recording?
Ideally, it happens on something
I would
unimportant
typically not want
so
to do
that you
this
don't
for
have
an
big
entire
problems. But
song.
yeah,
But there might be a break in the song where you want to add something that's just not available in the loop library, a really fancy fill or drum roll. Well, have at it.
Roll your
you
own.
can really go nuts this way.
You've shown them
But
both ways.
essentially, these are your options
Yeah.
when it comes to loops. You can use the entire loop or individual
Well,
hits
obviously, this
and
is simple
and again, I
basic
can
snare.
combine these.
But you get the idea. You set up separate tracks. Each track you put a different
So
percussion
remember, we
instrument,
can
a tom, a hi-hat,
a whole
crash,
bunch of
and you
stuff
just
here,
fill it in
merge
wherever you want
region,
that
and
beat to
now we
land
have
at whatever volume you want. Use the appropriate
single loop that
sample.
we can just
and then
stretch out
loop it all
as
you
many
want.
times as we want.
And you know,
I would
one
even
thing
add
I would do,
control instruments if you
not so
want.
much on the BandLab editor because you only have 16
So,
tracks,
These are our
but like in
basic
Cakewalk,
options,
drum
and
tracks great
that
when they're
leaves
separated
us
Oh
per
yeah.
instrument.
with MIDI.
If my hi-hat
So
is on its
we
own
are
track
going
and
to
my
get to
bass and my
MIDI
snare on their own tracks,
as soon
I can
as
consolidate
I
them later if I
get
want,
this
but I
Right.
like
You mix
them
it the way
separate.
you want, pan them the way you
Alright,
want,
Yeah.
so
and you can apply
that
effects
leaves us with
in
MIDI, and
individual
this is what
drums
it's
rather
done
than
with
the
MIDI
kit
is
as a
just to
whole.
use this MIDI
That's
Yeah,
the
it's
real
great.
difference between pro
So if we take
mixes
a look at
and
this, we can
amateur
double-click on it,
mixes. Pro
or
mixes
come
have
down here and
everything
click
on
this
separate
MIDI
tracks
editor button in the
going
bottom
into
left.
different space.
Yeah, and then you
Double
just create a
click here,
submix,
and
a
it comes
bus
up.
for
This
the
is
A
main
bus.
drum track, and that's
Exactly.
it.
even just for separate effects on the different pieces, yeah, you
can
can definitely get a lot more flexibility that way and a lot more space in the sound.
Very big
Oh, yeah.
though, because you see most of the stuff is concentrated in a very small area. So what are we looking at here? We have a piano keyboard, which is odd because these are drums, right? It even says
But
here
it's
on the
true,
back,
that's what they
generally
are
MIDI
on the
percussion.
keyboard.
Yeah.
And we have all these dots. Each one of these dots represents a musical note that's being played. And the keyboard tells us what note it is. So going horizontally here, we're talking about time. And vertically is pitch. And this will tell us where a particular note falls. So these notes fall on measure 1, beat 2, beat 3, beat 4, and so on. If we play this, let me see if I have it soloed. I'm going to solo it. If we play it, it sounds like a drum beat. Not really as good as the beat we had with the drum machine, though. If we solo this one, see, it sounds very different. And the reason
It's
for
using
that
a
is
different kit,
general
right?
MIDI.
That's right. This is using
Yeah.
the default general.
Yeah, general MIDI
a
kits
sort
are
of
really the basic
generic
of
standard
Yeah, it's
that
the
all
absolute
general
minimum
MIDI
that-
instruments support.
but they work.
Yeah, where
So it's
often
very
all else
basic
fails.
because it's
it's
the
They
always
play the
there.
sound they're supposed
it
to
sounds
play.
like drums, but
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like very good drums. So in order to make
Lowest
it
common
sound a little bit
denominator,
better,
but
what we
enable
can do is
the
go
ability to
here
get them in there and program properly,
click
and then you
on
can change the sound later.
And you can
Now
apply
see what
effects.
comes up. Now, if
You can apply
remember
effects
when
to
we
that
were looking
track
at the
just like
drum
you can to
machine,
the drum machine track, right?
there
Sure.
were different keys that would play different instruments. And here you see these keys are actually mapped to a piano style keyboard. If I had a MIDI control, I have a MIDI controller available. So you can see I can play it. You don't see it in the picture because it's out of view. But you can actually play these beats on a specialized controller or on your computer keyboard or using the mouse, obviously. But for now, we're not going to play
You'll
them.
have different latency
We
depending
just
on which
wanna
one you
replace
use.
them.
There's that
What
as
we're
well.
gonna do
On a
is come
computer
here and
keyboard,
see
it'll take a
we have drum kits,
microsecond
just like we had with the drum
to
machine.
pick up your hit.
And
Right.
I'm going to come in here, and now we see something that looks drum-like and sounds drum-like. So this changes the representation. When we come back into the MIDI editor, now we're actually looking at drums.
Hmm.
This is a little bit more like what we had with the drum machine.
See,
And
that's
now
much
we
more
see that we
intuitive.
have our hi-hat hits,
Oh yeah, for
we have our
sure.
snare,
I
kick
mean,
drum,
And I'm a
who the hell is
keyboardist.
going to know that a C
I'd
note
rather
logo,
see
is a kick
this.
drum, right? Or
it
that an
sounds
F sharp
exactly
is a
like the drum
conga.
machine sounded. Only now we have the flexibility of coming in and altering some
For me, it
of
was
these
important to
notes.
see
We can
which
move
of
them
those
slightly
pieces are laid
behind
out,
or
because
ahead of the
sometimes you'll
beat if we
have a
want.
beat where
We
it's
can change the
programmed even
volume
on a
of them so
section
that
where
some
there's
of
a
the
spot
beats are
that's
louder than others.
Yeah, that
gives
doesn't
you
We can
work.
add
grayed out.
That
So you
slight
just
that
drag
has
it to a
variations to
different
the
line,
beat
and then you
here
can
and
get that
there.
spot or that
So
part
it
filled
gives
in.
us a lot of
the
flexibility,
fact
but
that you
as
can
I said, we're
visually
not going to
see
delve into that
grayed
too
out
deeply in
drums
this
is
episode
very useful.
because
Yeah.
Because
that
I
can
play
take
a
us a
lot of MIDI,
lot of time.
and I notice
But
that
we
there
will
isn't a part
continue our
playing as I go
exploration to
through the
MIDI
kits.
and what we can do with
But
it.
if I didn't have a visual,
But I
I
think
wouldn't
that
know.
pretty much wraps up this
Yeah, probably
tutorial
not.
for today. So we're just going to get
Unless
back
we're
to the
actually
main
listening
screen
for it.
and
Yeah,
recap.
I notice when like a hi-hat disappears.
Hey, so quick recap. We use the BandLab drum machine to create a basic
Yeah,
drum beat,
something like that is
illustrated
pretty
how it
obvious.
works. Then we also went and found some beats in the BandLab loop library that we were able to use for our project. And finally, we went through how the MIDI works in the most general way possible, where we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail in the next episode.
Yeah, I like
So
where
I
you
think
kept
that
it on the
covers it
MIDI.
for this show.
Yeah,
Hope you
again,
enjoyed it,
I really don't
and
want
don't
to
forget to
overwhelm
like
the
and subscribe if
all
you.
know it.
Yeah, it's baby steps.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice job, man. Showing both options, the MIDI approach to building those beats and the loop wave approach. Uh, you got to pick one or the other. If you want to start making your own beats on BandLab, you got to pick one of those two approaches and see which one is that you are comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, everybody has their own preferences, but it's great to have options, right? I mean, a lot of people will automatically go to the loops, others will automatically go to MIDI and not realize that
Well,
there's other ways to do it as well.
you'll know which one works best for you when you find the one that lets you just creatively flow. Like if your idea is just coming out and it's like, oh my god, this is so convenient, click click click, boom, I got a drum beat,
Hmm.
then you found a good approach. Because if it
Yeah,
feeds into your idea and you're too busy making the idea and not trying to figure out the drum machine, that's the best
yeah.
choice.
I mean, obviously you saw from the video, the drum machine isn't difficult to use. So it gives you a good starting point. You can
Yeah.
say, okay, I can build a basic beat here, export it to MIDI, and then you have like a template that you can build on, right? And then you can go in and really start the massage and then turn it into what you want to turn it into. But
And they
so
do
that's
make it
really
easy to
great.
map.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
the way that you remapped that so conveniently, like that keyboard that's behind you, those pads at the end of it are nice drum pads. Like for
Hmm.
you remap that in BandLab and boom, you're hitting those
Yeah,
squares.
yeah,
You
I
are
can
playing
map
drums.
any one of the pads to any one of the percussion instruments. And I am going to be demonstrating that in an upcoming video because I'm going to be doing
Cool.
like probably about 3 parts on MIDI because it's just so much to cover, right?
Oh, I could do 20 years of MIDI
Yeah, I
that
mean,
I've spent learning the
Very
last
large
20
topic,
years.
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, really, I mean, obviously, I don't want to show people how to create a symphonic masterpiece or something. Just the nuts and bolts of it. But there are a lot of little nuances. A lot of people don't really take into account when they're putting a piece together using MIDI, like how a particular instrument reacts when you play. There are certain note combinations that just don't work on certain instruments or are almost
And
impossible to play.
that goes to what we were talking about a couple weeks ago. Controllers. The old
Hmm.
school controllers and what you're seeing nowadays. You're seeing new approaches where grids and these kinds of pads are becoming today's controllers for different kinds of musicians. DJ approach
Yeah.
doesn't think like a keyboard in front of him. He thinks like a 24 or 32 grid box with a whole
Exactly,
bunch of
and they're
lights
just
and
triggering samples and
yeah.
combining them in different ways.
But you
So,
are using sensitive pads. Like one thing that isn't going to change is MIDI dictates 0 to 127 on
mm,
a hit. Whether it's an expression hit, a velocity hit, 0 to 127 is the standard. I don't know if MIDI 3 is going to change that. I haven't actually delved into MIDI 3 yet, but
I
it's here
haven't
now.
even delved
Like
into MIDI 2 yet.
it
It's
was.
still very few devices still support that. So,
Well, no, we've been on MIDI 2. Like everything we've been doing has been basically MIDI 2 going back to the 80s. This new
oh no,
MIDI,
that's MIDI 1.
well,
The MIDI
it's
2 spec,
technically
the
MIDI
MIDI 2
1.
spec was only adopted a couple of years ago, officially.
Or is that they're giving it the number 2, not 3?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
technically it is the third. MIDI 1 was like Windows 1.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think
it
MIDI 1
did
was
not
maybe
make it
MIDI
into
point
commercial
nine,
synths.
right?
Because I was getting into synths when they were just trying to implement the standard, and
Right.
the
No, the
very
original
early
MIDI
stuff.
standard came out around 1980, give or take a little bit. I know it was
Yeah,
in that time. And yeah, somewhere in the 90s, the MIDI 2 specification
that's
came
what I
out,
consider MIDI 2. The
but
90s
it
MIDI
wasn't really
is
implemented
MIDI 2 to
until,
me.
or made official until just a few years ago, fairly recently. Yeah, there may have been devices that did support it. For instance, Studio One supports what they call like an enhanced style MIDI, which is
You're
kind
seeing
of MIDI too.
controller
But
automation.
there wasn't any kind of real standard. Different
This,
controllers would implement this extended MIDI differently.
yeah, this next generation that they're pushing now is trying to solve the light. Lights use MIDI a lot.
Yeah, and
It
the latency issue,
wave
because
audio.
remember, MIDI was originally like 2400 baud, like a
Yeah,
serial connection, right? Today you got megabit speed connections, so it's a little bit different too.
and the way it interfaces, say, with computers, like nowadays, a
Now it's all
USB or a
USB, yeah.
FireWire is the faster port than the actual MIDI plugs. Most of these new controllers, they don't even bother to put MIDI in and outs anymore in the controllers. It's
No, it's
USB,
pointless. Yeah,
and it's fast there.
and it's compatible with everything. You don't need special hardware to connect your MIDI devices. Plug and play.
It is nice though to have those old school MIDI ports because I do still have a
Well,
lot of
mine
equipment
does.
that uses it.
My devices downstairs. I have a Yamaha drum kit, electronic drums. It's got MIDI in and out. My Yamaha synth has MIDI in and out. Even my Pod XT.
Yeah,
I have a Pod XT Live pedal board. It's got MIDI in and out. I can control my effects from my DAW, so I can
yeah.
have
You
a
could
click
hit a
track
button on
playing.
your keyboard to
I can
kick in
synchronize that
distortion.
and have effects kick in and out of my guitar while I'm playing live based on a sync track. I can use, I have a little piece of software, Guitar to MIDI.
Yeah,
And so I just insert this on whatever track I've got my guitar plugged into, and it'll create a MIDI track as I'm playing in real time of whatever I'm playing.
and and as
And
far
whatever
as
synth I
recording,
have patched
you're
into that MIDI
you're
track,
happy
I
with
can
your timing
control through my Pod XT.
when you're
I
recording
can
your
switch
guitar.
patches. Yeah, I play my guitar, and in real time it translates it. It does a pitch analysis and converts it to MIDI.
Now you've studied the latency there, right?
There's very
It
little
doesn't
latency.
it
I can
doesn't
play
get in your
MIDI
way.
fast. I can play MIDI
That's what I'm
fast, to be
curious about.
honest.
It's one thing for the chords, and like it will read those pretty
Yeah, and it's
smoothly and
polyphonic
accurately.
too. So
Soon as you start going into like heavy metal, speed metal, Eddie Van Halen mode, I can see some of those blipping a little bit
you
real time.
have to be really precise in your playing. That's
Yeah.
one thing I found out pretty early, because it will easily pick up stray sounds and try to convert
Or
them to
dual
notes. So
notes.
fret noise, even the sound, you lift your finger from the string will vibrate slightly as you remove your finger.
Yep.
It'll pick it up and
Yeah.
it'll send a false note. So you really have to be careful with your muting. You have to mute like
I think
crazy.
it's good to understand what the software is analyzing and how it's converting
Yeah,
it. So
how it
what you
works.
just described there, like that effect, how does that translate to MIDI? The software has to if it's going to pick up that effect, has to translate it either in velocity or
Yeah.
level or
So
vibrato, tremolo.
a
MIDI
lot of
does
it
have
comes
like
down
seven,
to,
8 things it can.
so it's got to
Categories,
be
yeah.
able to analyze the pitch accurately, and to do that, you really need to play cleanly.
Yeah.
And even just which pickup you use is going to have an effect on how accurately it picks up the note.
So when you use that, you're doing it through your pod and it's software on your computer, correct?
Yeah, so
You
basically
don't you
I'm
don't use
plugging my
anything
pod into
fancy on the
that.
pod, right? You use a nice
I'm just
clean
using a
signal,
straight
no
preamp
preset.
output, no distortion, no nothing like
That's the
that.
way.
So clean guitar sound. It's going into my audio or into my audio interface, and I'm recording an audio channel, but I have this guitar to MIDI as an effect on that audio channel, and it sends MIDI to another audio
Yeah.
MIDI track, and that MIDI track records for the output of that.
And
And
that
that
can
MIDI
become
track, I can throw
strings,
a
piano.
Hammond B3 on there, and you will hear I'll mute the guitar track and just play the MIDI track, and you'll hear a Hammond B3 being played as I strum my guitar.
Yeah.
Or
Good choice.
whatever I have it set to, a string
Love the
section
B3.
of an orchestra, right?
Mhm.
And
It's
you
great.
know, if you're thinking out of the box there, let's say you got 6 strings you're playing with, and if you map that to say a drum kit, you're gonna write a different kind of drum beat on your guitar doing that than you ever would like on a pad or on a set. You will write a
Definitely,
different
yeah.
kind of beat.
It's all about the controller, yeah.
Yeah.
The controller changes some of the way you write your music. I don't write on a guitar like I would on a
And not
piano.
only that, what you hear coming out of the instrument changes what you play as well. If I set that guitar to a Hammond B3, all of a sudden I find that these guitar licks I'm playing all the time just don't sound B3-ish, right? So you
And
start looking for different ways to play that sound more like what a keyboard player would play rather than what a guitar player would
And
play,
nobody
right?
imagined what a B3 would sound like if it was played by a guitarist when they made those. So the ear gets surprised, like, oh my God, an organ's not supposed to
Well,
sound like
there's
that.
that too. So yeah, okay, I've
Unless it's
never heard
like
an organ
Deep
played
Purple.
like that before. But
Depends on the organ player.
there's
There's
some
a few
instruments
that actually did play them like guitars.
where if I took, say, a flute patch and did some really weird shit with that, they're gonna be going, that's not a flute, man. That's some guy pretending to be a flute player, right? And doing a bad job of it. So you have to know where to draw the line if you're gonna start experimenting like that. But yeah, it's great to have options.
That's like hearing a chord with a flute. You know, you're
Or
a flute is
saxophone.
meant. Yeah, sax. You're meant to hear one part of an arrangement with an instrument like that. When you hear a whole chord played with a flute, it doesn't sound right
Yeah,
because a flute doesn't play chords
right.
Unless you had a whole
I mean,
flute
you could have a
section.
flute
unless you had a
section, I
section.
guess. But
Yes. Then you're thinking like arrangement style. So if you're going to play a chord with an instrument
yeah.
like that, you're playing an arrangement. But usually I don't want like the same instrument for my 4 parts. If I'm going to do an arrangement, I want to do like a string quartet or something where there's some variance in each instrument. 4 parts should be like, a band isn't just 4 guitarists. It's a bassist, a guitarist, a drummer, a singer. Those 4 parts are done by different types of sound.
The opening chord to the Star Trek theme has 22 instruments, and all
Isn't that
they're
a
doing is
fantastic
playing an E
arrangement?
flat chord. It's just one chord,
And
but all
don't
those
forget the
instruments
theremin.
playing across the entire
Don't
range.
forget the theremin because that really is what sells that one.
But yeah,
Nice ambient
it's
Got a
just really
chords.
theremin.
3 notes, but spread over a few octaves, over a few different instruments with different timbres. And you get that huge chord. It slams into you. Bam! All right, you're ready to rock and roll. And that's all it is. That's how you get that big sound, by just repetition.
And theremin's got to be added tastefully. It's a spice. It's a spice that you can very easily overdo. But
Yeah,
Well, I'll
it's,
tell you,
it's just
unlike
want to add in just
cowbell,
that little
where you
bit.
just
Yeah,
never have enough.
Shinji, our friend
exactly.
Shinji, who's been helping with the spoken word, he is showing me that there is room for some interesting theremin work. He really is bringing that back. and
I
using
found
it in a way that like I don't get sick of hearing it.
I found a video online where a woman was playing the guitar solo to Stairway to Heaven on a theremin.
Why not?
It was incredible, but the video got pulled like the next day. I guess
Yeah.
Zeppelin, they don't like their stuff being, they'll steal other people's shit, but you
Neither do
don't
the
touch their
Eagles.
music, man.
Neither
No.
the Eagles or Zeppelin, you put their tunes up on your YouTube videos, you will hear shit. They will say you don't even have the option to monetize, or
Oh
you
no, they'll
can't put
pull the
this up.
video completely.
Yeah. Hotel California is the only one of my songs I wasn't able to put into my karaoke therapy YouTube library.
Mhm.
Eagles, the two Eagles songs I did, both YouTube said, nope, this video is not going up.
In that case, we have to figure out how to change the song enough that
Well,
it
it was.
doesn't trigger the algorithm.
It's on my keyboard. This is not an original recording. This is
I hear you. I
me
hear you.
playing the song,
What
but
I'm saying
they
is
don't
us-
even let you do that with that one. Don
us
Henley
figuring out
went through
how
some
to change
shit
that.
with them.
All we got to do is change it to a reggae beat on the back, and then they can't complain because that is not the same song.
No, it's kind of
Enough
funny.
variation would work.
Not that long ago, we recorded a cover of Stone's song, Sympathy for the Devil.
Nice.
Oh, I remember
But
that one. Yeah, that was good.
I don't think we actually published it at the
Oh,
time.
Veronica
The-
showed me Sympathy for the
Yeah,
Devil.
okay,
I
but it was
loved
kind of a hard rock version, really driving beat, very different from the original. I was doing some streaming on YouTube, so I brought up a cakewalk and I played maybe 15 seconds of this Sympathy for the Devil track through
That's all it
cakewalk.
takes for them to pick it up.
And it got flagged for copyright infringement, but not because it was Sympathy for the Devil, some Brazilian song that they mistook it for that I've never even heard of. But I guess the drum beat or whatever was similar enough to this song that they
Or
identified it.
sometimes I think you see the sloppiness in their algorithm, because what they're trying to do
Yeah.
is damn near impossible. I'm still trying to figure out how they're doing it as much as they are,
Yeah, I
but
know.
in the end, you can't analyze all this through digital fingerprints the way
No.
they are.
I can see if
Some
you're
audio
playing,
actually looks the same. Some songs
if you're
probably
playing the
look the same
original
to this
recording
AI.
on your own video, they might be able to pick up on that because they have a sample to compare it against and they'll see the similarity. But if you're doing a cover, the cover could be different enough that, yeah, it might be the same song, but it might not be. They have to give you the benefit of the doubt, right? Or
One
you
thing
were
would be to
just
try to start every song like Magic Carpet Ride, where you just have just this like, all the instruments are screaming and just doing weird stuff before it actually all comes together and becomes the song. So you got that first 15 seconds they're like, there's no way you're matching that to anything because that is all
Yeah,
right.
but see, these days they analyze across the whole song. So
Yeah,
even if
exactly.
you
Yeah.
15 seconds of the AI triggering is enough for them to say, "Oh, you got a problem here." They're analyzing constantly through the whole track.
Yeah. Yeah,
And they're
again,
trying to
there's
compare
reasons
it
for that
to
they're good, and there's reasons for that are bad. So yeah, I see.
they're trying to compare it to songs, they're trying to compare it to movies, to the fingerprints, the massive AI that's going on there and they do it like fast. You upload a video, wait
Within
like
minutes.
15 minutes, they've
Yeah.
analyzed it and said, "Oh, here's a problem here." There's a supercomputer sitting back there with digital
Not just
fingerprints
one.
of everything.
Thousands
They
of
have
that they
a
think
whole
is copyright.
array
arrays of supercomputers. Yeah.
Yeah.
like multi-processing systems, man. I can only imagine what their data center looks like, or data centers. They have more than one.
Centers, yeah.
That is the way they
Yeah,
do.
that's some fascinating technology that we're like experiencing as it's being developed. That AI is a true AI.
Hmm. 'Cause
But
you
it's
gotta
very
think
wrong.
of the size of the database
As
that they
you've
must
seen,
have to hold all those songs.
it can be as much wrong as it is right on any
Oh,
given
yeah.
time. So it's a work in progress for them to do what they're wanting to do. They may
And-
never be able to do it.
You wonder how
And
much
you
alternate
can
tuning's messed
contest
up too.
these copyright
Yeah.
hits, but you know, if it doesn't go in your favor, you end up getting your channel shut down or some
Yeah,
crap like that. So it's best to just let it go more often than
for
not.
most, for most, it's a demonetization
Yeah, most
decision.
of the
Like,
time,
oh,
that's
I
all
can't
it
make
is.
any money. I wasn't making any money off this video anyways, unless you are getting millions of hits, and then you should care whether you're getting a flag there. Because if you're getting millions of viewers and you aren't getting monetized, it takes a lot of work to get millions of viewers.
It
You
does.
want to be like at least monetized.
And sure, as long as you, I mean, because they do make mistakes, and as long as you can prove that they're screwed up, you can contest it. But
Yeah. Sometimes you can actually get something monetized. If I was to go to him for all those karaoke tracks and say, "Look, here, I'll give you the original. You can see this is my keyboard making these instruments and these sounds. It's not the original recording." I get why they take royalty rights. So you're welcome to give them whatever the percentage of the
of course,
usage rights for the song, but that's not 100% of. They still run ads on my shit, so somebody's making money somewheres.
hmm
And usually when they do demonetize you, they give it to whoever has the claim on it, so
right?
somebody else makes money off of somebody watching your video.
Yes, definitely.
That's something that is going to have to fix itself in the 21st century. Otherwise, YouTube will run into problems, and there's other platforms competing with them who are moving that monetization away from a company. And like DTube is basically a crypto based YouTube. There is no owner of it. All the content is stored in blockchains. And whether you get monetized or not does have to do with the traffic that you generate, not the content itself. So it shifts some of those things. And if the solutions like YouTube's don't eventually fix this stuff, then a lot of the content creators who do want to make a living that way are going to move off those platforms somewhere else.
Yeah, there's going to be a shuffle. Right now, up and well, for a very long time, YouTube basically was a monopoly. If you wanted your videos to be seen, YouTube was your only option, right? So
And
yeah,
if
now
you
they're getting
didn't
some
have them,
competition.
your videos weren't getting seen.
That's right.
Yeah.
So now they're getting competitors, so they're going to have to start reevaluating how they do things as well. So hopefully
Well, and
things
the
will work out for
users,
better. Yeah.
us as the users, have to reevaluate how we're doing things.
Yeah.
When that doesn't fit into your monetization plan, then you go the Patreon route. You start using super chat. You do other things to compensate for the fact that nobody makes money off of YouTube except for was it
YouTube.
Seth Rogen, Joe Rogan.
Yeah, well, I mean, some people do, yes. I mean, there, Rick Beato, one of my favorites. I watch his videos all the time, and he goes on and on and on about the whole. One of his videos get pulled, and again, they're educational videos, right? Where he's demonstrating how a song is put together, and classic songs usually, and often his
Like Rick
videos are
Beato.
almost, yeah, his
Yeah,
videos are almost always demonetized and often pulled.
like
Uh,
Rick Beato.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it sucks, but what are you gonna do?
Well,
The copyright
Rick bitches
owners
a lot.
dictate how
Rick
YouTube
bitches a lot
operates.
about I'm making educational videos. So he
Yeah.
convinces them that like, hey, I'm making an educational video. They still don't pay him, but they do let him do what he's doing because clearly he's making educational videos and he has a massive following who want to learn his
Hmm.
way. So they do give some leniency out there for some usage rights, but they don't pay.
No, yeah, most of his stuff is
And
demonetized.
he bitches about it like
No, the
constantly.
demonetization he doesn't because he understands that and he's cool with it.
Oh, only when they shut down his
But when
videos.
they
That's
pull
what
the
he was
video
bitching about.
completely, he gets
Yeah.
really pissed off because he really who's benefiting from that?
Yeah.
Some people are going to be introduced to music they haven't heard before if they get to see this video, and even if not, the copyright owners are making money. They're not making any money
Yeah.
if they pull the video. So what are they gaining by this? It's just ridiculous.
Well, the fact that the ones who claim the copyrights are getting the ad revenue is
Hmm.
why they're letting you and
Sure.
him to continue to do it, because they're like, hey, I
Right.
found a new source of revenue for content that was just dying, and I'm not making any money because nobody was watching it.
Right. Exactly.
They've kind of
Yeah.
shifted some of that.
And that's the thing, you got a lot of these aging rock stars, right? Like
Selling their songs to car commercials.
well, there's that, yeah. What
Rolling
Springsteen
Stones
just
make more
sold his
money these
catalog
days
for
from
how much?
cars than they do from anything else.
Springsteen just sold the rights to all his music for
Half
like
a
$500
billion
million.
dollars.
$500 million.
Man. Is
And
that
Glenn hates Bruce Springsteen.
Oh.
Now he hates him
I-
even more.
I don't like his voice, but he does have quite a collection. I'll give him that. You know, and he's
And
a good
he's from
songwriter.
Jersey.
And he's
Glenn
from
is
Jersey.
from Jersey. They're gonna come hunt you down, man.
That's why I got to be quiet when I object to Springsteen. I do so quietly with just a quiet head shake, like no. And it's just his voice that gets me is the main thing. His music is fine, but
he is a
if
good
if he'd let
songwriter.
somebody else
He is.
sing it, it would have been fine by me. But something about his voice just kills me. So that's just me. But I do understand why people like him so much.
He is a
I'll
good
have to give him that.
songwriter.
But yeah, so
I
you
just
got
did
guys
one of-
like him. Dylan, he got a fortune for his music too, right? 300,000 or
And,
something.
hey, and the Beatles.
Yep.
Up till now, the Beatles
For
held the
300 million, yeah.
record.
But then you got
Bruce came and
guys like
swept it
David
under them.
Crosby who are complaining that his music isn't making any money off of Spotify, right? Because yeah, not that many people listen to 40-year-old music on Spotify, dude. You know,
And Spotify
if
never
you
really.
put out some new music, you'd be making some money. And you got this kind of you have these aging rock stars that are still kind of living off of the millions they made back in their heyday in the 70s. And a few nostalgia tours here and there or compilation CDs. But other than that,
Spotify never really converted the monetization for what they're trying to do. iTunes did set a standard for like selling a song and things like that, but Spotify never really shifted the artists get screwed on Spotify. Sorry, even the big artists get screwed on Spotify. So the little ones, they might have an option to be in a market, but they don't make anything. It's hard to. Spotify is kind of in the same problem as YouTube right now. How they monetize.
Okay, now the problem with Spotify, the way I see it, they do pay out a lot to the artists. The problem is there are so many artists that everyone gets a very, very tiny slice of
You ever been in
a not
ASCAP?
very big pie. Because let's face it, a lot of Spotify subscribers don't pay, right? They're
A
willing
lot
to
of
put
people
up with a
don't
few
subscribe to
commercials.
Spotify. Why would I subscribe to Spotify? Why would I go somewhere to get my music? I get my
Because-
music. Like, that's a
Well,
hard sell for a lot of computer and mobile users.
for people like me that grew up buying albums and cassettes and CDs, the idea of streaming is a little bit alien. But for younger people, having any song you want to
They were
hear
born
right
into
there
it.
on your phone anytime you want to hear it is great.
Yeah, they're
For
born
a few
into that
bucks a
mentality.
month, you never have to buy music.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just the way it is.
So you're
these days.
subscribing to the library. Is what you're saying? Like, why should I subscribe to Spotify for a certain amount every month? Is because I get access to a library of music that's worth $3 a month.
Just hang on a second. I'll be right back.
Yeah. And the difference between the Spotify collections and everything else, I mean, you can get to everything from there, but for me, music was always more about the individual stuff that I'm trying to do. And a lot of it isn't stuff that's even on Spotify. For me, a lot of stuff is just the stuff that I've recorded myself. Like that's the stuff that I'm using.
Well,
So,
exclusive
that or-
content all these networks that are looking to get somebody to pay for every month, exclusive content is the main reason why people will go get a Spotify account or a Pandora account that you pay for. um, Whatever music library you're going to pay into on a regular basis, assuming there's content there that I can't get somewhere else. If I can get it in both places, then eventually I don't need this account because it's all over here.
Yep. And me, I mean, I was always easy. I was telling you the story. Like I've had cars in the past where I had one tape that was just in the tape deck, and it was there for 4 years or 6 years or whatever.
Mine
Like,
was
if I
stuck in
in
there.
that car. Yeah. Sometimes
I
it
had
gets stuck,
multiple
but
takes that got stuck.
I had one Pink Floyd tape. It was Animals on one side and Metal on the other, and I just left that tape in there for at least 5 years, if not longer. But if I was in the car, that album was playing, and it was just playing one side or the other all the time. And so I was very easy. So like I didn't need access to this enormous library of new stuff because I had the stuff that I liked, and I would just
Well,
listen to it over and
and
over
you were
again.
used to like being able to live with less in the tape days or the CD days.
Sure.
Hell, if you had one of those 16 CD changers in your car back in the 90s, I always wanted one. Like, damn man, if I could put 16 CDs in there, I could drive forever
Yeah.
and I'd be happy.
Yeah. Because if you're not in that mood, you just go next, next, next. Oh, that one. Yeah, that one.
If I took my 16 favorite CDs, that's what I would take to the island if I
Yeah,
couldn't take
exactly.
anything else.
Well, the one that I have in the CD player in my current car is the Live Without a Net disc 2, Grateful Dead. So it starts off with Scarlet Fire, and it has just so much good stuff on. Eyes in the World is on there. There's so many good songs on there that I can listen to that CD forever. And
If you're
not
talking like Dead recordings, you could literally
Yeah.
fill up 16 CDs just with bootlegs and shit.
Yeah, exactly. And that was
Recorded
the other problem.
everything.
That was the other reason why I wasn't a big fan of iTunes in the first place, because it wants to look at your whole library and then get everything
Oh, no.
all settled. Yeah, it's like I don't want you touching that because
No
there's so
music
much in there.
service is
Yeah.
getting access to my library. They better be selling me access to a library.
I just have too much in my stuff that I don't want in an everyday playlist. I've got 5,000 versions of this song and 400 versions of that song. It's like I don't need that in my library. My library should be, I'm doing one copy of each one, but maybe today I'm in the mood for
And
this live version or that live
the
version.
reason
so I have to
why
get
they
it.
want access, is because they want to be your organizer. If you want to get rid of your duplicates, a smart person can load up all the MP3s that I have in my library and find duplicates and get rid of them.
Right.
You don't need to give your soul away to iTunes to do that for you, and you shouldn't.
And I don't want to, because I want the duplicates, because I want the version
Sometimes,
from
yes.
October 31st, 91. And I want the version from whatever, like all these different versions of
If they're
live stuff. I want them all.
if they're truly different versions, a good file analyzer knows that's not the same file.
Right.
It does not find duplicate songs that way. It finds duplicate files that are clearly the same recording, because that kind of fingerprint is spot on. File duplication is usually very accurate.
Yep.
It would probably do some sort of CRC test or something that compare the two files.
That unique code that goes with that file. Going back to the 90s, it's gotten so simple to see a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy.
But even there, if you took an MP3 that you downloaded 256 kilohertz, re-encoded it at 192.
Oh, the moment you do that, it's not the same file.
No, it won't recognize it as the same file anymore.
But see, that Apple Fancy Mojo shit will try to go analyze the song fingerprints and say, "Oh, you have two songs." It will do that, and two separately encoded versions of the same song. That kind of analysis, if you don't turn it off and say, "Don't do that," because I do want to keep the 192 version and the 360 version for different reasons. Don't let it be your brain.
Indeed.
And don't pay every month for it to be your brain.
That's the other one, yeah. It's like I've got so much music, I do not need to be paying every month for more music that I either don't need or don't have or don't want or whatever. There are things that I would love to have that I don't have, of course, but there are ways I can get to, there are things that I can do to make that happen. I can go buy CDs like we used to do. Oh my god. Oh my
Well,
god.
if you understand what you will do, then you might understand what you're trying to sell as an artist and your music, and whether it's going to go on to a Spotify and that's how you're going to try to make money with it, or whether you go find the want ads for people looking to buy music, how you make money that way. This is a new thought in the 21st century that we're going to be
Well,
having regularly.
I like creating the stuff, and I like finding people who want the stuff. And to me, at the moment, the monetization isn't the priority at all. It's the creation and the connecting with people who are like minded in liking the stuff or wanting to explore the stuff and all that kind of thing. There should be a monetization aspect of it that I should be looking at, but
It'd be
I'm
nice
just
to be
not
able to
there yet.
monetize good music. I,
Yeah.
I want to make good music. I want to believe it's monetizable. It, it may end up being monetizable inadvertently. Might not get paid for my music, but the music might get somebody's attention over here for something over there, and there's an excuse to use this music in that, and it may end up being something that's monetized differently elsewhere,
Yeah.
tied to it.
We were talking about video games. We were talking about
That's
animation. We were talking
yeah.
about several different
Video
areas.
games and cartoons is where you have so many people making that kind of content these days, and just like music makers are looking for loops and oh, free loops here, free loops there. um, you're going to have content creators who want unique, distinct music for their animations because they do want to be like unique, and
you look at the music
don't
of
just go
video
grab
games
free
these days,
loops.
and it's like
There is a market there.
it's a full movie soundtrack basically. And yeah, the people are writing music specifically for games and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And there is a market there. It's
Oh,
kind of
definitely.
underground still, surprisingly, but I mean, you just have to do the work. Yeah, I mean, Veronica showed me a couple of sites that are just basically music classified ads. I should be checking them every day.
Yeah.
Just so busy doing everything else. But if I had to go back to making a living with music, trying to do it there, I'd be hitting that up like a programmer hitting up, the programming classified.
Exactly. Because there's a market for it. I mean, like you said, there's people who have, they have what they have for their music and they have some piece missing, whatever it is, and they need to fill that need. So,
And it's not just one thing. It might be production. It might be I need a guitarist or I need these drums. Usually, what I'm seeing is like we are making this show or this movie and we're looking for this type of music. They describe a generic scene, and it could be either hip hop or they specify certain things that they're looking for in the mood. That's the kind of job that a creative musician should be able to jump on.
Yep. Exactly.
You might have to pay though to submit. On some of those jobs, they're really looking for the most serious ones, and because they get so many, it's like this might cost you $25 to send your submission in.
Yeah.
And assuming on what you're trying, maybe I might pay for something if I thought for sure I could win that. But that's about knowing
It's like
who
buying a
else
lottery
is.
ticket.
Yeah, but it's a creative lottery ticket.
Yeah, and again, if you
It's kind
really
of like
think,
these contests.
Yeah.
You
if
can
you have
make
enough
500
confidence
You have
bucks.
in
some
your
input, yeah.
abilities, why not
Go
spend the
win
money?
one of these contests. You make 500 bucks. You don't have to spend anything actually to enter the Band Lab contest. And
No.
if you really think that you can be the cream on the top at the end of the month, it's worth the time and effort. Because if I'm going to write a Hollywood soundtrack to a movie, I'm going to have to put some time in to get something that I think would impress them enough to say, you got the job.
Yeah.
Yep. Building up a catalog. Yeah. That's what people talk about also is, when you're getting started, don't try to take your first song and try to monetize that and say, hey, I've got a song and try to just run out with that. It's like start building up the catalog.
And I'd rather build the catalog.
I've got 15 songs. I've got 30 songs. I've got 50 songs.
At this point, I'd rather build the catalog and have it ready once I decide to say, hey, I got a whole bunch of stuff. You're looking for Lord of the Rings type music? Boom, here. You want a horror movie? Boom, here. You want this
And
new
that's
wave
really
metal?
with these sites.
I got a bunch of metal guys.
you build up a catalog. It's just like if you're an artist, you have a portfolio. Here's all the stuff I've done, and maybe there's something in there that you can use. Because if you try to write the music on demand, there's so many other people already
It's
have
like
the
moving a
music
piano.
written,
If you're trying to
and
write it on demand, you're the piano mover, and they're going to sit there and say, no, not try it over here. Okay, pick the piano back up.
yeah,
You don't
no,
want to work that way. Better to build that library, which do it
exactly. And
naturally.
if they're looking for something and you have something that you think fits, great. Pay the
If you're
25
paying
bucks.
attention to what they're looking for, because they do tend to ask for very specific things. If you
They
notice,
often are,
everybody on
yeah.
there is
We need
asking
something
for,
with a 50s retro
yeah,
vibe, or
then you make your library thinking like, oh damn, they're always looking for that rap metal stuff. Well,
yeah,
okay, well make your library and fill it with a bunch of that, and you're ready.
yeah. So yeah, they're too. Now, when it comes to movies, at least when it comes to the big movies, you have no hope at all, because
You
they
have
don't
to get known as a composer.
you already have to
You
be
have to
known. They're,
become
they're gonna come looking for you. You don't go looking for them, and you're probably in demand anyway. So,
a lot of
sorry, Spielberg, I don't
a
have
lot of
time to do
times
this.
those are the guys that come out of Juilliard. The ones
These are
who
the guys.
become the
I mean,
great movie composers
when you're
come out
composing
of
for a symphony, that's very different than composing for a four-piece rock band.
yeah.
It's like night
But
and day.
ironically, a lot of the music that you're going to see in demand out there is not looking for symphonic symphony with that much cost in production.
Hmm.
They really
Oh,
are
there's no
looking
cost in
for
production. It's all MIDI these days.
those big movies are
You'd
those
be surprised at
composers.
the sample
Oh,
libraries some of these guys have, man.
what I'm not surprised about what they have. I'm surprised when they don't take the opportunity to work with a real symphony, because
Hmm.
when you're scoring for like an Avengers movie and they're willing to get me that whole damn orchestra, you
If they're
bet
willing to
your
pay for it,
ass I'm
sure.
gonna do it.
Definitely,
Fuck
yeah.
the sampler. I will use that orchestra if you have the budget.
Yeah.
The big movies still put a good chunk into their music budget. They put more into their music budget these days than they used to for the music. A horror movie in the old days, music budget, what do we got left? John Carpenter started writing his own shit because trying to make it for nothing. And
Yeah.
I happen to be a musician. Let's merge my two interests.
Hmm.
Nowadays, horror movies know, and video game horror knows, without killer music, it ain't scary.
Hmm. Yeah, you can see that. I was actually watching a video the other day just demonstrating the effect music has, where the same scene played with two different types of music, very different effect. One is just like just kids playing in a playground or something. One is happy, cheery, and the other is like menacing, and just some adult watching them play. But the one you get the adult supervising them, everybody's happy. The other, you think that adult wants to kidnap or kill one of these kids just because of the difference in the music, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it has a
Mood
huge
sets the mood
effect
at
on
large.
the
Yeah.
overall mood of the scene.
Well, before the show, Andrew was showing us the like original Alice in Wonderland, and when you listen to the like music scores that they used to do, this was like 1923, and the music score is it's all the words. Like other than occasional words that they were putting up, the score was actually telling the story, and it was doing it in that like doop 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 kind of sound, walking, and ooh, now I'm scared, and a horn, expression. Music writing, you don't need words, you don't need people saying anything, and you can say it in music and totally set a scary or a happy mood
Oh yeah.
very quickly. That was Disney realized that when he was putting
Oh
that
yeah.
formula together, he realized like this music is as important as that cool ass art
Every
we're trying to
Disney
do,
movie, the soundtrack is killer. It's
is as good as the animation,
when I was a
not
kid,
better
I mean,
sometimes.
I most when I was a kid, most of the music that I listened to, I had a couple of albums at home, singles were soundtracks from Disney movies.
I started with
Mary
singles.
Poppins, The Jungle Book.
Oh, yeah. I had all of those
Yeah,
in 45s.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you'd have the whole movie soundtrack, right?
I
But
wish I still had them. Some of those in like good condition are valuable as hell, especially the Jungle Book one.
yeah. So I mean, Disney's been making a killing with music all these years. Every
They
Disney
wrote the
movie
Sound
is
of
just,
Music.
yeah.
Well, I think we're getting on pumpkin time, but that was really awesome. The professor at Band Lab is at BL Professor, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Ah, see, I passed the Edge 5 challenge.
Good job.
That's important in 2022 because you will get tested.
And it was a great video for the introduction of MIDI and getting people started on that and getting, the core concepts of a drum loops and all that, getting it all down there. Because so many people just need that little push just to get started, and then they would have so much open up to them to be able to do. And that's the key, is to get them in there,
Yeah.
get them started, because they could be the next one to make that great next song, and we just don't know.
Sure.
And not being afraid of MIDI. Like the main
Yeah, a
reason
lot of
why
people
a
are
lot of people
intimidated
don't know
by it.
MIDI is because they
It's
think
really
it's something
technical.
complicated. Yeah,
It's not. It's point and
you
click.
demystified a lot of that.
I'm going to go even further in the next video to just show how, yeah, even a bird can do it. There's
Yeah,
a bird here
exactly.
I think that 2-year-old upstairs will learn how to do beats watching your video. And he did
Well,
get a new toy for Christmas that actually has pads on it. And
there you go. All
and
he
he's
has
only
to
2.
do, just has to connect it to a computer, fire up Band Lab, and hit record. Good to go.
Oh, he will. He's already hitting mine. He comes down here and literally changes my keyboard mode, and I can't get out of it after.
Well, he actually taught you a couple of new features on your keyboard that you weren't even using.
Yeah. My modulation wheel, I never realized it went forward. He grabbed it and started doing it because I never use it. So like I was like, oh my God, it's a 3D mod wheel. It has a forward as much as left and right.
And it took a 2-year-old.
In 12 years.
That's my favorite. It takes a 2-year-old to figure some of that stuff out because they just try something because they don't know that you can't do it. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, you can do that? It's the best.
Yeah. Oh, I think I was supposed to send Ange a message to tell her when I was ready.
There you go. That's all right. We can always take care of it though. Had some good stuff with MIDI. Have more stuff that we can always do.
Yeah.
I want to say next time I'm gonna probably do some playing along to some Rush MIDI tracks that we were talking about. And I was talking to Tony about that the other day.
Oh,
Are you ready for the Rush?
I'm just about ready for it. Yeah.
I'm on the R's, so if I'm going
Nice.
to do Rush, now is my time.
Yep. For me, it was just finding this MIDI site that had just 4 pages of Rush MIDI files. So there's just so many songs to go through, and so many of the songs that I already know how they go. So it's just throw the MIDI on and just play along with the bass, and it's
And
just
sometimes when
out
you're
great.
looking through the MIDI, when it comes to Rush, you'll actually find some are just like solos, certain parts in the song that are useful having in MIDI, especially guitar solos. You'll see that with certain bands. Guns N' Roses, I can get you the guitar solos by themselves in MIDI. Practically all their songs.
Yep. And that's the thing, is it's what people focused on when they were making the MIDI. Anybody who made the MIDI, they were like, oh,
Well,
I know how
yeah,
to play that on
and-
guitar. So they start playing it, they get it on the MIDI, and then say, hey,
You have a guitarist who's like, I know the whole song, but I need to know that like specific thing to duplicate the solo. It's one of those things that's popular for people looking to learn something. MIDI is just sheet music, so why would somebody want to go get the guitar solo? Because same reason a violinist wants the sheet music, or you want a tape player that slows it down so you can listen to it and feel it out.
well,
Each has its benefit.
yeah, I was teaching guitar for a while, and I was using a piece of software called Guitar Pro. It's tablature, but basically it'll read MIDI, it'll export the tablature as MIDI, and it shows standard.
MIDI shows as tab.
And not only guitar, it's got a full-blown synthesizer included with it. So you have entire arrangements, and you can just mute the guitar track if you want and play along with the rest of it. And it's all MIDI. You can export all this MIDI.
That's a
track
lot
and-
like Mediculous, Glenn.
Exactly.
Meticulous is this great like program for using for educational purposes. It'll show whatever you're playing. It does it all through MIDI, shows staff, shows major, minor, every musical notation that you would normally interpret. And you can see it as a keyboard, you can see it as a bass, guitar, tab, whichever way that you like to be presented your learning material. It's a very useful tool.
Mm-hmm. Trying to see
And
if I
it
can
does
bring it up
come with a decent synth. All of these like MIDI tools will typically come with like a general MIDI synth that will take care of like you want a pop kit or a rock kit. Yes, General MIDI has a rock kit, a pop kit, a jazz brush kit, orchestral kit. Good General MIDI will always take care of the 128 sounds that General MIDI specifies, which is not a lot, but actually it does cover
It covers
a lot.
pretty much every common instrument.
Creative MIDI programmers have found a way to always incorporate General MIDI. They pick the instrument the closest, and then using chorus and reverb, you can turn it into a sitar or but there is a sitar actually in General MIDI, but you can take it and actually tweak it even better.
Oh yeah. So that's the beauty. You can throw effects onto it and make it sound like something completely different if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, good General MIDI synthesizers do have reverb and chorus. That is part of the specification.
And even if they don't, if you're using, say, BandLab, then you can add your DAW's own effects on there as well.
My own personal preference is I always turn off any General MIDI. Like I strip a MIDI file before I start on it. I get rid of any chorus, any reverb, levels that are not set by me. I want all my tracks to start at 101 and centered. And every MIDI track, I get rid of any dynamics that I'm going to do post. The only thing I use that MIDI track for is the note information.
Right.
And its velocity. I don't fuck with that. Wheel data. I don't typically fuck with unless it's sloppy wheel data. Like, sometimes these guys get a little carried away and they either mess up a slide and it's better not to have it at all, or they didn't get it perfectly and you just want to nudge it.
That's one of the
I have to massage some of that.
With a lot of MIDI, especially when it comes to guitar bends. They often don't sound
guitar
like
solos is where I almost exclusively have to do it.
Yeah, because it just doesn't sound like a guitar string bending. It sounds more like a portamento or something like that. So yeah, and those would have to be tweaked often.
When you're looking at a MIDI file that you downloaded from the internet, you can tell which MIDI programmers actually use good guitar controllers because their MIDI data will have certain portamento, and when you're doing these wheel bends to simulate a guitar or the expression swelling in, you can always tell when somebody actually did have a good instrument, because chances are they didn't programming in guitar data like that.
That is difficult.
You can do it, but it's so much easier to pick a guitar up and do it and use that plugin that Louis is using.
Yeah, exactly. If like
5 seconds,
instance, it would sound exactly like a guitar bend because it is a guitar bend.
And it translates into MIDI. Like, as long as the controller knows that what you're doing there is this in 0 to 127. And sometimes it takes 2 or 3 controllers. It's a little portamento, it's a little bit of level, and a little bit of, expression. You have like 7 or 8 different ways to talk to a note. So between all those ways, it simulates a guitar effect or a bowed string effect. Very easy to simulate those things in MIDI.
Now, this one that I have up on my visualizer right here, this is what kind of parts of it are the
This is meticulous.
So like that bottom keyboard there, if I hit, keys on the key, it'll show. I'm not sure if the sound is coming through or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you're able to see what keys they are. It also tells you up in the top there what the chord is or what the interval is, like a perfect fifth or an octave or.
Yeah, cool.
the major chord or a minor chord or whatever you're
It's
doing.
great for teaching, especially if you want somebody to learn on the staff. So, and even if you don't, like if they're cool with seeing the keyboard, but they have the staff at the same time, a lot of people actually do learn without realizing it. And me, when I'm looking at the staff, I do know what's up there, but using it in relation, I'm getting better at reading the staff. I used to take forever to try to read sheet music.
And we can also
Every
put up a
good boy
guitar.
deserves fudge. Where am I?
So I can play on the keyboard and have it show up as a guitar chord.
Yeah.
Cool.
This is where it gets really handy. More people are doing guitar lessons these days.
You can do the same thing and change it to the instrument to bass or what have you, but you're still playing on the input is still coming from a keyboard, which is nice. So I'm a fan of that.
Well,
But yeah, it's just
technically,
messing
the
around with
input
it.
could be coming from your guitar. If you're using that plugin he has, your guitar is triggering just like your keyboard is. So you could be inputting on any instrument that can convert analog to MIDI.
Yep. Good stuff. So that was just one, just to see the kind of the intro of the meticulous program, and that was good for being able to get it changed as well. Going to being able to output the keys that you're hitting, being able to change the instruments that you're hitting, being able to change the parts that you're playing. All that stuff is stuff that you can do kind of with meticulous there. Very
Yeah,
neat
it's
program.
definitely for educational purposes. That's why I originally started loading it up, because I wanted to be able to show what I was playing to someone so that they could see it visually when I'm not in that room trying to do it that way.
Yep. Yeah, I can see it being huge for training purposes, for being able to show people what you're playing, because even if you're playing whatever in the background, they could just be glancing up and be like, oh, I can see that that's a C octave in the left hand.
Well, I love the instant translation, being able to see all the staff. For the person I was trying to show, they could read staff.
Mm-hmm.
They don't, but they can. So if he didn't understand the chords I was playing on the keyboard, because he's not a keyboardist, he can at least understand what he's seeing on the staff.
Exactly.
And the chords, like, the key. Every time I'm jamming with someone, if people would just tell me, or if I could see it as they're playing it, then jamming with people is so fucking easy. If, oh, you're playing this chord, yay, okay, I get what you're doing. Trying to figure out what somebody's doing and what key they're in is why some jams never take off.
Yep. Or why some
It's like,
jams
that sounds cool, but I have no idea what you're playing in.
and sometimes the jams don't take off because it's just too simple. Like we're just sitting in one key, so somebody gets bored first and tries to change key, and nobody else goes with them, and all that kind of stuff. So getting everybody on the same page and having an interesting enough
Well, a jam needs
background
a
for everyone to
purpose.
jam on, right? Exactly.
A jam needs some kind of mission, whether it's just to explore a key. Okay, fuck, let's just play with E for a little while.
Yep.
That's what we're gonna do. Eventually, you got to say, okay, let's go somewhere.
Yep.
And that's how you
Everybody's
get
gotta
your
go somewhere at the same
you
time.
get to know your band members doing that. Like the first day I went to my high school band's practice, I just moved to the school. It was my first day at school. I started that new school and I got into my new band in the same day.
Nice.
And
That's
it
the
was
way to
pretty
do it.
much just like, hey, I got a keyboard. I met a bassist while I was in English in fourth period. At the end of the day, I'm grabbing my keyboard and going over this dude's house to like, yeah, we got a band. And it was like 4 hours of E and A.
Yeah. And that's the thing is you can milk E and A for 4 hours easily.
You get to know like this dude.
Yep.
Musically.
You get to know what people are up to.
And they were both minor. So like I knew I was in with a good band. Like, yeah, you can mosh on E minor and A minor. I got a lot of stuff.
I got you all day. It's the way to go, though.
Plus,
You got to have a good.
they were all
good center,
tokers.
key center. Yep. Sure. And they love those keys because once you're in those keys, you just hang out there all day.
Well, they wanted to be a different kind of metal band, and this was back when metal bands didn't have keyboardists. So it was like, hey, we want to be a cooler metal band. Let's get some keys added to the sound. And it was me. I was always strings or piano, mostly strings. I actually never played. Can't say never, but never wrote in piano parts
You should
in my
have
high school
something
metal
so
band. It was all string based.
Mm-hmm.
drink.
And that's the thing is for metal, sometimes could be strings, could be, a
No,
couple
it
different ways
worked the
to go
best
about it.
for what they were trying to do. It was like late 80s symphonic metal that ended up taking off in the 90s.
Mhm.
So we were a little ahead of what we were trying to do.
Nice. But you do find that there's an outlet for it. You do find that there's an audience for it. You do find there's people out there who are interested in this stuff, and that's the important thing: connecting with the audience and the people who are
Now with
interested.
BandLab, you find it faster.
Yep.
And you find it further. Like, holy shit, man. There's a lot of people I can jam with.
Yep.
And they're all over the world.
And that was the thing is for me jumping in, finding bass needed as a hashtag, or needs bass as a hashtag. Like finding those really got me started, because finding songs where people were actively looking for someone to add a bass part was for me the biggest thing. Because to me, part of it was with collaborations, like, oh, is my input welcome on this song? And the fact that the song is forkable, you assume yes, it should be input. It should be welcome because the song is forkable, so somebody wanted someone to add something to it. But to me, it was understanding that if they're
It's like
saying needs
BandLab
bass, they're
BandLab
literally
is its
asking.
own BandLab is its own classified ad system. Like
Yeah.
needs vocals. I put that on every fucking post.
Exactly, and that's the thing.
Guess what? I get vocals.
Yeah, because they're asking for it. So like, I look at that hashtag and just looking through and be like, oh, I love that song, and I love how that bass part goes. Sure, so I just jump in and start doing it, and that was what got me connected to a lot of different people and got me started. And just the feedback that I got from everybody was awesome, and that was the biggest thing, was the fact that anything that I added, I got feedback from the person who put it out in the first place, saying, oh, that's awesome, thanks, thanks for adding that for this, and other people join in the forks later. All that stuff was really part of what really built the community around the stuff that I've been working on, which is great.
Yeah. All the people you end up following are the ones that like you creatively glom to.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Somebody looking for something.
Generally, you've added something to one of their pieces, or they've added something to one of yours, and you gel. So you keep doing it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
It
And that's what built it up.
encourages music production.
Yeah.
It more so than it discourages. Thankfully, I see more people trying to make more tunes, do them better. That's been the coolest thing with building this library. Originally, it was just kind of like I'd like to find singers who can sing this way, or people who like this song. As I've seen those who like something or start following me when they hear this, you get to know all those band lab. You know them by their interests, because when they pick in my library, I can see the kind of musician that it ends up being right from the first like that they do, or the first fork that they choose.
Mm-hmm. And that's the key.
And once in a while, I get surprises. I get somebody who starts in some weird folk song, quiet piano thing, and next thing I know is doing crazy ass metal stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute, you are in both of these genres?
Oh yeah.
That's
one of the things that surprised me also getting started is, started with some of the folk stuff, started into some of the metal stuff, started into some of the heavier stuff. Just, I have a wide variety of songs that I like. I got some reggae in there. I've got some Latin stuff in there. I've got some rock stuff, some metal stuff. I'm all over the board.
You collaborated with so many people that you literally have that opportunity with those different bands.
And then sometimes I'll have a song nugget in my head and it'll be like, oh, it sounds more like that would go with these guys, or more like it would be something that would be interested for those guys. So I have to kind of, decide where something kind of feels like it would fit best.
Plus, you're getting thrown all this shit that goes on in the back room with us sometimes. I mean, there's been nights where we go into like whole nights of one crazy mode, especially with the metal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's where we can just say, okay, let's go see Phrygian and just go nuts. You just hang out and see Phrygian all night, but you can make some good shit out of that. It's all about what we can cook up. And it depends on the key that's running.
Asking where we're at.
Yeah.
Pumpkin mode.
It's after 12:30, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Pumpkin.
Pumpkin time could be fine. Even the birds.
What was the bird's name? That's Igor?
Oh, well, his real name is Charlie. Igor is his character. He's not in character right now. He's just being himself. So
He
yeah,
knows
he's
his
Charlie.
middle name. You rang?
It's a little past his bedtime, so I think he's on the sleepy side right now.
Oh yeah, birds are very temperamental about that. That's like a little kid.
Mhm.
Yeah, he likes his routine.
Well, I thank
said
you
the
all.
Okay, Dad. And he flips. Show them his flip. Oh, does he have a treat?
He
He rides a
flips?
skateboard too. It's so cute.
Yeah,
Skateboard ride.
he does
started-
little tricks,
I
but
started a
he's
channel.
tired now, and I don't have a walnut handy. Can you grab
Yeah.
a walnut?
Well,
We started
we'll
a
bring
YouTube
him-
channel for him.
We'll bring him back for next week. If you're doing MIDI, definitely want to check these out.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay, will
Loving
do.
the information you're showing. So important.
Thanks. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we're gonna
And
just
nothing
end
blew
off,
up.
end off on a high note here. Let's see if he's awake enough to do this. All right, here you gonna
See,
you
I
gonna
always
flip?
worry they're gonna crap on my hand because they don't care. Oh wow, he does flip.
Hey,
Oh.
good boy.
On your finger, no less.
Yeah.
Okay, you are cool.
He's a smart little bird.
Well, we'll see you next Thursday with the
All right,
professor.
great.
And are you guys putting these episodes out on a certain day?
I'm hoping to get a new episode out this weekend. With any luck, I will. But no, they're not really on any fixed schedule.
Hey, no, Charlie. Charlie, no.
As you go.
Bad boy.
Get them as you go. That's the way to do it.
Well, sorry, I missed that.
Said get them as they go. That's the way to do it.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. A lot of it comes down to just time management, I guess. Try to.
No,
do
and
little things.
getting the thought structure out. I mean,
Well, there's that too.
you
Yeah,
did a good
because,
job of laying out everything that needed to be thought of in each process. Because
Yeah,
MIDI,
yeah,
you have
it's-
certain considerations, and I was wondering during the process, like, oh, what happens if you go into this time? And I was asking ahead of time because I was like wondering it. Go figure, you actually answered exactly what I was thinking.
Well, that's what I was hoping to do is answer people's questions, right?
Mm,
But
yeah.
not without overloading them with too much information at the same time, which is why I'm going to spread it out over a few episodes. And,
That's the tricky thing with showing, new toys. Like it's like, oh,
there's
you have
so
to show
much-
the
there's so much to
coolness of the
show,
toy without making them scared of like, oh my god, that thing's gonna kill me.
but, yeah. If you
Or
throw too much
exploding
at
my
them, they
hand.
become intimidated and back away, and this is just too complicated for me. I'm not even going to touch it, right? So you got to do it in stages, I guess. And
Oh, you did a
build
good
up to
job.
Oh, thanks a lot.
For the MIDI, holding off here and separating it because it is an important discussion. It's good that you let in with something like beat making. Very enticing for a lot of people
Right,
here want
and
to
you
do
know
beat
that's
making.
something that a lot of people are going to want to do. And when it comes to MIDI, creating beats is pretty easy. So it's a good
And-
starting off point, and then you can branch into working with other instruments from there.
And they're going to see how they can enhance that MIDI workflow that they were utilizing here to get
Exactly.
that killer beat.
Yeah.
I like it.
Mhm.
I heard Ange sliding.
She did.
We thank you so much for joining us at Band Lab. And we say enough because you need to go ahead.
Take it.
That's right. We're not going to take
Great
it.
show,
We're
guys.
going to join us every single evening
loved
as
it.
we go ahead and we talk some shh with Glenn and Tony and the rest of the gang at Angify. You all have a great night. See you tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to go ahead and we're starting down in Australia with Schmorley and working our way across the U.S. tomorrow night to end in California for New Year's Eve.
I was
We'll
wondering
see you
about that.
there.
I
Good night,
bought a lot of
everyone.
energy drinks
That's
to get
right.
through it.
Gotta bring the energy drinks. Thanks,
I
everybody.
did.
Thanks, Professor. We'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks. See you guys.